Well, hello everybody, and welcome once again to this week's edition of the Inworld Review. It is the 7th of May of 2017, and we haven't been here for a couple of weeks. Basically, a lot of reorganisation and various things going on, but we couldn't leave it any longer, and we're back with you today. Now, this is an open-ended talk show. We look at all things to do with what we call the metaverse. We do have a focus course on OpenSim and the hypergrid, but we do go beyond that. And in a sense, today's show is going to be, to a great extent at least, not totally, looking beyond the OpenSim related platforms. I'm going to start off with, before I introduce our guests, I'm going to start off with a little anecdote. You may have seen this online at YouTube. It was filmed and went up a couple of days ago. But in high fidelity, a platform, by the way, where I can't see anything for some reason, but I can talk quite happily, we had a Q&A or an AMA, Ask Me Anything session with Philip Rosedale in high fidelity a couple of days ago. And I asked a few questions there. And I particularly mentioned to Philip that I sense a movement amongst creators to conceptually the idea, in many cases, since the days of Mesh, of creating offline, even if it's like an offline instance of Open Simulator. And then once you've got it, formatting it and, deploying it anywhere. So if you build a shop and fill it with stock, build it, and then send it to Second Life, or send it to an OpenSim region, or send it to space, or send it to high fidelity. I didn't really get a very good answer on the mechanics of this. He went off trying to find Chris Collins, who was better suited to answer it for me. It was the basic theme there was, increasingly there are so many platforms coming along, and they don't actually really interoperate fully at the moment. We're very keen to look at ways in which they can. And I know IMA, the Immersive Metaverse Alliance we've talked about before, is another organization that really considers themselves to be looking at interoperability of the metaverse as opposed to just, say, OpenSim or Halcyon or AribaSim or various derivations of that code. So, and also something that is beginning to happen is a lot of creators are beginning to use, it's actually a game engine authoring platform, but it's not really restricted to that, called Unity. Now, you can obviously build a game in Unity or something like that, and it is built in Unity, but you can also use the platform to create things and then export them in other formats. And again, since the advent of Mesh and all this highly economical stuff, in fact, a lot of people work in that. They even work in Unity to do fashion designs just for, closed platforms like Second Life. And we've recently seen the advent of quite a few online virtual platforms, usually with an educational focus or something specific, that have actually used Unity to create a kind of world. And you log in, and very frequently you also log in via the web. And we'll have a bit more on that too. Now, we have mentioned in the past that I'm also, hopefully, he says, because I can't get to grips with this Unity at all myself. I leave it to others, I think. But, building a studio that is one of our outposts will be uploaded to a platform called Space. It's actually already there, but it's not presentable, in other words, so you can't find it. But the idea being, well, have something like a studio that's like this, but it's actually portable and can be literally deployed into all sorts of worlds. And we might, for example, reinitiate one of our programs called Crossworlds. Well, it's an interview show with me, actually. And maybe use the web platform of Space or something to do that from. All is up for grabs there. Now, We did plan to have with us today the CEO of Space, Adam Frisby. He's really looking forward to coming here, but I can't explain why, but I can't find him. What I do know is it's at 4 a.m. in Australia, so it's just possible he hasn't risen to the occasion, or his clock hasn't gone off, or something, because he seems to be online much of the time, very odd hours. Hopefully, he will be able to turn up because Adam was actually one of the founders of OpenSim long before we had the hypergrid and what it is today. The basic open simulator platform. And he is CEO of Space, but he's very familiar to a lot of old-time OpenSim users, and we did indeed have him on a panel back at the OpenSim Community Conference. So back to the guests that have arrived. First of all, we're joined by somebody who'll be familiar to all of you. Welcome back to Pathfinder Lester. Welcome, Pathfinder.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Now, one of the reasons I got you on, particularly today, even though Adam's not here yet, was that I know from the days of Reaction Grid and the Jibe software in particular, you did quite a lot of work with Unity.
Yeah.
In terms of bringing things online, and Rowan at Space and Adam, I think, were saying that you've been in space, haven't you? You've been fiddling around a bit and stuff, and I don't think they were quite sure how up to speed you were, but I was saying, oh well, put him down for mine, and he can work on that. They've actually given me Jerry Obama as a mentor, although Rowan taught me through a lot of the basics. But it's still early days there. They are public. I guess it's what you call a public beta. But what do you think of it? I mean, compared with the kind of thing as Adam's stuff is phenomenal, his own stuff, but you, of course, you worked with Unity in the past and the Jibe stuff. Are you impressed by it, or do you think it's got?
I'm not into the virtual world stuff that much, so I don't know. It's okay. It's really amazing what they've done. I mean, what we were trying to do with Reaction Grid and Reaction Grid as a company basically just faded away because for various reasons, companies come and go, but the Jibe platform was all about basically being able to use Unity to build environments locally and then upload them to a central server where you could have shared worlds with other people, and basically all of this stuff that they've got working already now in Space is stuff that we were really hoping someday to implement. It's basically like where Jibe. I looked at Space and I was like, yeah, this is where I wanted Jibe to go. Eventually. And so it was. I mean, it was because seriously though, I mean, as time goes on, more and more, I just think Unity is a really, really good core technology to work with. And if you look at other environments like in the VR world, like VR chat, it's the same model. It's like, you build stuff in Unity, and with this additional code, this additional plugin that you've installed from the company, and then within Unity you can upload your world and manage stuff and do all this other stuff. And what I really like about and this was something that we never really pulled off with Jibe also. Jibe was basically, at the end of the day, it was all about people building their own small, bespoke, isolated virtual worlds. Right?
Yeah.
And with Space, it still has that interconnected dream, right? Where you basically you can have your consistent identity across multiple worlds, and I think that is a real big part of what needs to be built in terms of the infrastructure of multi-user virtual spaces, is the ability to maintain a consistent identity across different worlds. I mean, that's why OpenSim and the hypergrid is the special sauce that I love about it. Is just I am me no matter where I go, and My inventory follows me. You know, I mean, and again, space has got, you know, they've got all. It's interesting. It's like seeing the core values and understanding of what made OpenSim and continues to make OpenSim a really interesting and compelling platform. But then saying, well, let's do this with commercially available technology that can go to the next level in terms of visual fidelity and game mechanics and that stuff.
I'm still struggling a bit, not only with the Unity part, but you know, little glitches in the updates with the Inworld viewer. But one thing I quite like about it is that unlike, say, Linden's project Sansar, which is building their own engine and seems to be even more delayed again now till late summer, you know, they will have their own engine, and the idea is you create offline, you deploy it, and then it gets sent up to the server, and then it's there. But I've always felt like, you know, how much will you be able to do in terms of collaboration in world? You could co-presence is one thing, but you know, if I can't res a screen in Sansar and show somebody something on it without actually doing it in Sansar's offline engine and then uploading it in advance, you know, I can't res a prim and get somebody to edit it with me. Like, I'll pull the handle, then you take over, you know. But the thing I do like about space is that once you've got a build up and it's tested on the creator server and then it gets sent to the live server, although it is pre-configured, including you know, menus and things for sitting down and doing as much as you're capable of building into it, really. Once you're actually online in your space, you can actually click edit room, and within reason, you can drag and drop and arrange furniture and take stuff out of inventory. Not to the extent that we can do in OpenSim, but it still does have that familiarity, so that, you know, you can imagine somebody going in and hastily using the viewer to rearrange a few things, even though they obviously can't, you know, make the whole build without doing it offline. And so it seems nice to me that they've kind of bridged that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's that malleability of the environment in real time. I mean, and that was something like with Jibe that we never had, and we were starting to work on, you know, and then basically, you know, the company just folded, ran out of money, and that was that. But you know, I think that's a really powerful thing about this environment, and if it you know, if you find that sweet spot, and if it runs on you know, it runs on, you don't have to have a super gaming computer to run it and all that, and the UI is easy enough, and you can build worlds that are very customized in terms of the UI to different use cases. Then I think it's a real winner then.
Well, two of the magic things that I really liked about it is in High Fidelity the other day, I mean, my graphics card announced, well, High Fidelity told me my graphics card wasn't even, it's up to everything, I thought, but it apparently is not up to High Fidelity. It won't be for a few years, you know. Even though I downloaded a software driver that said it would do 3D headsets. It's compatible, but I haven't got one of those, so I wasn't really bothered. Yet, you know, going to space, it's smooth running. You can load it into their viewer. It loads in just a couple of seconds, then finds the world. That takes a few seconds more, but you know, it's probably simpler and easier than OpenSim here or even Second Life. But the other thing, of course, we're always talking about how much we need an HTML5 viewer for OpenSim or the hypergrid. The great thing about space is you can also load it with WebGL. And grab an embed code for your space and put it on the web.
Yeah.
And much like YouTube, I was actually planning to experiment today by raising a prim and putting the space embed code on the web page and putting our efforts on the prim. Unfortunately, like YouTube, your media access on the prim here will be unique to you, the user. So there's no way I could press on this and you could see what I'm watching or what I'm doing. But it does, you know, it does offer opportunities. You know, I could make a big dome somewhere with lots of gateways into web platforms. You know, like we have gateways to hypergrid destinations.
Yeah.
And you know, operate one world from within another world. And when I spoke to Philip, I had this idea that somehow you can maybe make a build using Unity, something like that. And just as you can export all the lighting and the scripting and the NPCs and all sorts of things direct from Unity, maybe it would be possible to build a communications infrastructure that was embedded in the build, yet actually accessed other things via the web. So maybe a studio in space could have communications facilities built in that allowed it to talk to the studio here in OpenSim. So a text channel bridge, maybe a voice bridge or something, so one could explore interoperability through the actual objects you upload, as it were, and the code within them. However, I wasn't able to demonstrate that. And by the way, if you see a few glitches on the set today, or especially if you watched the news an hour ago, I was doing some rearranging here on our regions in the week, and I needed to cut down the number of prims on 2 regions and modify a few others. And clever me went to my area, and I selected all the objects that didn't belong to me and sent them to return. What I forgot was that the objects that belong to my 2 other avatars are not me. And so they have all been returned to those avatars, and parts of our sets and parts of our builds have all gone missing.
So there's like chunks, there are holes and things?
Yeah, exactly. The only thing I can say is that my prim count is now down to a manageable size. But at what cost? So again, the prim I was going to try to embed space on didn't happen for that reason either. But I don't think it would have been too helpful for us. Okay. Now, hopefully, I'm keeping my eyes peeled on Skype in the hope that Adam from space will be able to join us. I know he was looking forward to it, so go figure. But I have 2 other guests here in the studio today. Well, 3 actually. Firstly, of course, I am joined by James Atloud, as ever, multitasking on our cameras. So welcome, James.
Oh, thanks, Mel. I'm enjoying it so much.
And a funny thing happened on the way to this show, as in a funny thing happened on the way to the forum, etc., etc. Right? Yes. Yep. I actually went into space earlier today. I was on the Creators Grid, and actually Creators Grid and the Live Grid share chat, so I got very confused indeed. But I spotted none other than my friend from every virtual world there is, and that was Lyr Lobo. And you know her, she often comes here. So welcome again today to Lyr Lobo. Hi, Lyr.
Hi. It was so great seeing you. And it was funny. Yeah, you had no body. You were just messaging me from gosh knows where.
Well, actually, what had happened was I was on the grid, what they call the Creators Grid, where you prototype. And the chat system to your friends works across. You can talk from the Creators Grid through to the Live Grid. But I actually looked up the area where you were, and I came across to find you, and I found myself in a big empty room with lots of literary things on the walls and some cities in the middle. Couches, whatever you call them. But nobody was there, and you were saying, I'm there. And then I suddenly realized, actually what's probably happened is that the version here on the Creators Grid has gone live on the main grid, and you're actually on the main grid, not on the Creators Grid. So I was probably standing next to you talking, but on a totally different grid, which was to all intents and purposes identical. Anyway, I figured that out. So I simply logged out and re-logged into the main grid, and whoop, yes, there was your region, and there you were. And this is quite fortuitous because the event you were involved in there was part of a much more greater comprehensive event that you can tell us about. But I remember posting the program for it earlier in the week, a virtual roundtable, more an education roundtable, really. And a very extensive agenda you had, but for some reason when I was flipping through it, I missed the fact that you were going to have a component that was in space. So it was great to see you there, and then actually realized that I'd come at the tail end of what had been a big conference where everybody had been using space as this kind of hangout. And I immediately thought, I've got to pull you into today's show simply because this is probably the first actual event of any size that I've come across in space. It's all preliminary work and building and testing things out at the moment, and there's some great regions online, but there aren't, apart from Space's own meetups, there haven't actually been many gatherings of people. And here you were sitting with, half a dozen people about. And, that's like, oh, wait, people are alive here at last. And then I realized that it was all part of the greater conference. And which then brings me to my final guest. Well, except for Adam. Adam, where are you? And that is now I've got to confess here. I have called this lady Heike Philp for an eternity, and I have just been today told that the pronunciation is Heike Philp. Anyway, I'd like to welcome Heike Philp to the show. Heike is involved in using virtual worlds for language learning. She has a resume that will go under the floor, so I'm going to stick to giving you that description. But welcome.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Now, how has it been? Because you are very much one of the moving figures behind that conference itself, weren't you? It's been very successful. I mean, well, it's over now. If you look at my Twitter stream, twitter.com/malbones, you will find a link to the agenda there somewhere, if you're curious to know what happened. But how did it go? And have you got any records, like film or stuff that people can replay?
Everything has been recorded, and it was the 9th Virtual Roundtable Web Conference for Language Learning Technologies, and we've been running this event, and it's been a community event of language learning experts who are just crazy about language learning technologies, and we've been hosting some 400 guest speakers in the last nearly 10 years. Everybody from creating wikis for language learners until this higher end of virtual worlds experts, we've had them all, basically. And over the weekend, we had 35 guest speakers, a big bunch from Brazil this time, and usually there's an attendance of some 300 to 500 only. It's a smallish conference in my eyes, but it's wonderful because it's a very, very down-to-earth conference, and it's also one where I can experiment with new technologies, and I decided to have a virtual book fair, and this is where space came in very, very spontaneously, and I'm so grateful that it actually worked.
Yeah, no, it's. I should explain. The conference is an online conference. In other words, it's web-based as a rule. And you were using Adobe Connect, I think, for most of it, were you?
Yeah, it's always hosted in Adobe Connect and has been. Yeah.
But one thing I did, although I missed the space thing, I did notice on the agenda you had a session, for example, I think it was in Second Life, for example. So using virtual worlds as part of that conference is not new to you. And of course, virtual worlds are perfect places for language learning. I even in OpenSim here, I forget the details, but I went on Safari to one a few weeks ago. It was Spanish language learning, in fact, and a remarkable build. It was like a game. You didn't think of it educationally. You just things sort of guided you around, and you learnt things incidentally while you were on the kind of quest. And it was put together marvelously. But there are plenty of instances in Second Life and other places of this too. And of course, space itself has a whole method of authoring where you can actually create quests over and beyond just places to get people to come. How important do you think are these here and space and elsewhere as virtual world bit for language learning? Obviously, the literary fest, the book fair, as it were, has proved its purpose for you. But over and beyond that, do you see an increasing use of virtual worlds for language learning?
Well, we've been involved with this virtual world for language learning for about 6 years. So we've been doing EU-funded projects, developing the expertise for language teachers to be able to use these spaces. And we've done a lot of effort in training teachers and preparing virtual spaces in Second Life and OpenSim. Currently, I keep saying I live in Second Life, but I work in OpenSim. We run projects for ministries of educations and that in their OpenSim areas, and the teachers that are part of our community, they're all over the world. They're just language, virtual worlds enthusiasts, as it were. Yeah. And we've learned to create machinima. We've learned how to actually implement a pedagogical approach to language learning that is not sitting in a classroom in front of the teacher, but it's venturing into space. It's venturing into different areas, taking screenshots, coming back, talking about the experience, that sort of thing. And the potential for language learning is enormous because so many language learners around the world do not get a chance to be able to practice their language with neither native speakers nor with other people from, who speak that language. And so we're hoping to do telecollaboration as a main pedagogical approach eventually. But currently, the students are missing. I mean, we see teachers are kind of sitting there waiting for them to come, but they're not coming. Yeah, honestly. And the few that are coming struggle greatly, not only with the language, but with the technology. And so we're having our handful to try and nurture a couple of test teaching scenarios.
Have you, virtual worlds are obviously OpenSim, HyperGrid, especially because the servers that are part of it are scattered all over the world. But, it's it's a global platform, transnational, if you like, internationalist. They're ideal because, you can be logged in with somebody from another part of the planet and two separate languages, and you can learn up from each other. You can experience to a certain extent, other cultures and outreach from them. And I've got a bell going off here in my headphones. I hope it's not coming across the airwaves. There it goes again.
Nope,
hopefully.
Nothing here.
Okay, thank goodness for that, because it's deafening me. Right, it's a new alert system and it won't shut up. Right, events are happening on OpenSim, it is telling me. Right. Okay, so have you actually a space and things like it, of course, may be the kind of avenue where you can get more traction from the students, as it were, because of the ease of access. For example, you were attending today, even though I would not have known. I was actually in the viewer client when I got to the right grid, of course, whereas you were actually in the WebGL version. But we were all in the same room simultaneously. And of course, I'm imagining students that might want to come for language learning. And if you can post on Facebook and then just give them the link to the space venue, and they go to a web page and the WebGL version loads, that's a very quick way of, getting people that might be interested in over there and into the location to partake or see what you're doing. Have you tried, I mean, obviously with space that's the case, have you tried this much with any other virtual world activity where you've actually had some kind of learning space embedded on the web and you've just been able to send people quick links?
Well, the latest experience, and this is what made me approach space and for this virtual exhibition space, which I thought would be lovely to run parallel to a conference, is because in March we staged a web conference for teachers of German, and we happened to have got a sponsor who helped us finance a virtual exhibition space, and it really looked fantastic at the outset. It looked like a big, huge exhibition hall type of things with little avatars walking around, and the entry page was fantastic. But then once you entered that virtual exhibition software, which apparently cost 20K on the free market, then what happened was you ended up on a 2D web page of an exhibitor with a 3D image where you could plonk some logos, and that was it. You could read maybe a bit about the company, company, you could look at a video resource, and then trying to chat to those who were present. And we obviously encouraged the exhibitors to be present at certain times. Just even a simple text chat was a nightmare.
Really?
Just, you can imagine that. And so I was so terribly disappointed. As let me try and find a solution that allows us to text chat, allows us to go into a 3D exhibition space and feel a sense of presence, and so that even the book authors can welcome their guests by seeing them, And we had at the virtual round table, we had 3 publishers, which are not commercial publishers. There are independent publishers. They're teachers who run their own publishing company, as it were, with ebooks and some, work for teachers or other for students. And these 3 independent publishers I invited for the book fair, and 2 of them came into space to welcome people and show them around, as it were.
Yeah. Well, very successfully by the look of it. The sound of it was
gorgeous, yeah. And we had 4 active sessions, and we were encouraging those in Adobe Connect. We also helped them with voice to try and connect, get in. Some couldn't get in, and this was also the experiment. How easy is it for them to join? How much fun is it for them to create an avatar? And then I was constantly sort of talking them through, whilst screen sharing in Adobe Connect, how to get in, how to log in, which button to click, how to sit down, and that sort of thing. I think we had 4 sessions in total. We got about maybe 15, 20 people in world, so in space. Sorry, I should say. But it was fascinating to see that a lot of people. We got very, very positive feedback.
Well, one nice thing I thought about your build, because there are elements in space that are optional to do with the interface, which, for example, you can build into, the build before you upload it. Rowan, who's chairman of Sinewave, actually gave me one of his conference builds, and I was looking through the code, and I couldn't make head or tail of it, but there were scripts all over the place that allowed things to pop under the up on the interface. And when you walk around in space normally, and you would come up to one of these chairs, you'd see a little arrow key inviting you to kind of sit on it. But I noticed, for example, the moment I arrived on your region, there was a heads-up display, which was sort of coded into the region, which allowed you to choose a seat to take and things like that. How did you go about setting up that? Did you was it the Sinewave people, that Rowan or somebody who set up that region for you, or did you have a special team to get to grips with Unity?
Well, that was the beauty about what I thought was fantastic by the company, and especially Rowan Freeman, who, when 2 weeks ago, when I approached him for a tour of space, just simply trying to get my team to have a look at it, we weren't thinking of the virtual book fair as of yet, and so I just asked for a simple tour, and we arranged for a couple of people of us to be there. And then he spontaneously started a training session on how to build things in virtual. So he showed us, it was in Zoom, he showed us his interface of Unity 3D, and then he started to show us the various quests for language learning that are possible, and this and the other. But of course, looking at Unity itself, the software, whilst Rowan has been talking quite fast for about 2 hours.
Yeah, yes, I know this feeling.
That left me a little bit speechless, and but I had 2 in my team who are both builders, and they seemed to have gotten the sense of it. So I was quite happy, all right. And eventually I said I then decided, okay, what about, would it be possible to do this 3D book fair, which I had in mind, and I've been wanting to do it, but I didn't know how to go about it. So I said, well, would it be possible? And then Rowan said, okay, let's have a look. And 2 days later, he invited us back for another tour. Again, my whole team was there, even more people. We were 7 it was we gathered in Zoom, and he screen shared his screen, and then he built in front of our eyes this exhibition space, and he showed us exactly how to move the prims, how put the pictures. I'd sent him the book images prior to that, and also a link to the Amazon page where you can buy the books. And so he added the image to the canvas, then he added lights in front of it, and then he added, and it was in an hour and 15 minutes, he'd finished the space. And this time it would make complete sense to me as well, because it was simple. It was just a simple how to add and how to create.
You know, it's really funny because back at the OSCC, I got hold of Adam Frisby, who's still looking, by the way, here. Just haven't forgotten him. And he gave me a complete show, mostly of his regions and stuff like that. And if you think Rowan is fast, you should just see Adam, you know, to go through it all and that. And slow down, please. I'm trying to take this in, you know. Yeah, Rowan, considering he's actually running the company and takes minutes off to talk to clients and stuff all the while. I mean, I was amazed, you know, to spend a couple of hours showing me this, showing me that. And actually, to be honest, afterwards, I thought, actually, wouldn't it have been better if instead of showing me, you just built it for me? Because I was understanding it, but getting to grips with the, you know, people show you all these things and you think, oh yes, no, yes, and yeah. But, you know, when it's all over, you think you can't quite remember it all. And, oh, maybe it wasn't quite like that after all. So, you know, I think for many people, it will be an uphill learning curve. But for, you know, people who've done it before, and I'm sure Pathfinder here, for example, will find it very easy indeed, given the, you know, the previous experience with Jive.
Well, apparently they have these building tools in space that people can do, but you mentioned that before. Have you tried them? I haven't tried them as of yet.
No, what you can do in World, as it were, is strictly limited. What you can do is well, basically the way it works, for those interested, I'll just highlight it. When you join space, you just get, they give you a little room, and you're on the main grid, and you can go to all sorts of nice, fast locations and look around, or you can just teleport back to your own home. There is nothing in your home by way of furniture or anything else, just like there's not much on your body except for some default clothes. And you go to the marketplace and you buy the clothes you want and the furniture you want and stuff like that. And once that's in your inventory, you can, as we would do here in OpenSim, quite literally res it or spawn it, to use the lingo of space. So anything you've actually bought from the marketplace that shows up in your inventory, you can more or less treat as you would in Second Life or OpenSim hypergrid locations. There isn't actually a lot there at the moment, depending on which grid you're at. Well, especially if you're on the main grid, there's just elementary things you can start with. Once you've spawned or res these, say, a piece of furniture in World, you can go into an edit room mode, and you can take anything you've spawned and move it around, like rearrange your furniture and rearrange your room. And likewise, you can change the things you're wearing, your costumes and stuff, based on what's on your inventory. But these will be relatively small items. Now, if you're interested in creating for space, what you have to do is you have to sign up for what they call the creator grid, which is a separate grid, although most things that are on the main grid are on the creators grid, because that's where they started before they were approved and shunted through to the live grid. To actually author anything of any significance and scripting and all the other stuff, you actually have to upload to the creators grid first and have it all tested before it goes to the live grid. And to create, you have to use this authoring engine called Unity. There's a plugin system in Unity for the space world, which provides its own menus and automates the process of uploading and things. And if you want to build a vast region with buildings and stuff like that, then you have to really get to grips with the Unity engine and build literally your entire location. But if you're a creator who just wants to create clothes or armchairs or something and sell them, then you also have to create them in Unity and upload them not as a region, but as a marketplace object. And if it's approved, the marketplace object then gets transferred to the main grid where people can buy it off you for either gold, which is like real world money, or silver, which is like an in-world game money, and they give you a whole load of that when you start these days anyway. So you can acquire virtual goods in world. So in the in-world viewer, or indeed on the WebGL version, it operates very much as if you were in OpenSim here or Second Life, but whatever's on the marketplace you can buy. It goes into your inventory, and then you can do whatever you want with it in your little parcels. But the actual creating those things that go in the inventory that you sell, or creating whole regions that you want to deploy, is something you actually have to do in the Unity engine. So there is a lot of potential for in-world people, for example, but you couldn't allow another user to res a piece of their furniture in your region, because their inventory and what they can do with it is tied to them and their own region. As far as I can tell, there's no way you can share, like if I had an armchair and came to your region and I wanted to give you a copy of the armchair, as far as I know, I can't do it. You'd have to buy your own copy off through the marketplace. But the metaphors, as it were, not actually that dissimilar, although somewhat simpler than Second Life and OpenSim. But when it comes to the actual creating of vast, structures where you can have built-in scripting, built-in lighting effects, all sorts of wonderful things, then that's where you're diving into the Unity platform, as it were. I'm just looking at the time here. We're an open-ended show, but I am aware that Lyr here does actually have to vanish before too long. She could only stay for the first hour, which I reckon that means we've got about 15 minutes of you left. How was your experience with it, Lyr? Because you, am I right in thinking you were a presenter at the conference? But
Yes.
you were also in the book fair region. It was I think you described it as the place we're hanging out during the conference. So obviously a lot of people like the idea of just logging in there as hanging out in the lounge, so to speak.
That's right. In fact, there would be a half-hour break between some of the sessions while they were setting up keynotes, or like the Brazilian one was 15 speakers. So, so you'd have this little break in between, and we would jump into the book fair. And loading it took about 1 to 3 minutes, depending on me and my WebGL, right? Because I had a lot of windows going.
I know that feeling. Yes. How many monitors do you have? Do you live in a? Are you in a room with a circle of monitors around you?
I'm only using 2 at the moment, but I am building a system that supports 8. Yeah, but it was a wonderful experience. Of course, I felt like a new person, and it's always refreshing to be a newbie again, because you can make all kinds of mistakes and no one goes, ha ha,
Yeah, yes.
So, and of course, Jackie came by. She was wonderful. And Rohan, he hung in most of the morning with us, which was just absolutely breathtaking. And by morning, I mean, I was up at 4:30 listening to Paul Driver from Oxford talking about virtual reality and language learning. So, yeah, the conference began at like 3 my time today. So 2 Pacific Second Life time. So, yeah, it's an international conference with absolutely amazing sessions. But the book fair gave us this opportunity to touch and interact with books, think about whether we need them in our library, and then talk about them in a relaxed setting. So that was really wonderful. Talking was simple. Navigating the chat as far as it popping up and moving between private chats and public chats was just fine. Friending for the browser-based version, we weren't always getting a confirmation that we'd accepted someone's friend's request, and that could have been me and my lag, right? But yeah,
I have to say it's not just a browser version. It's the same with the viewer version I was in.
But it worked smoothly, by the way.
Yeah. Once I friended you or somebody
That's
friended
right.
me, they showed up in my friends list immediately.
That's
It's just that I didn't get any confirmation. It just did it. You know?
So I gave someone like 7 invites, and they're like, "Okay, already." No.
Yeah. Don't need any more. Thank you. Got you. Got you. Got you.
Love you, baby.
Yeah.
Oh, but it was wonderful. And what's interesting, I think, for people who've been in virtual worlds before, is when you touch someone's body with your cursor, it brings up their apparel. You're looking inside their wardrobe, which is really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So you can inspect them. You see how much their stuff costs. So if you admire something that they have, or you want something similar, related, whatever, it's very easy to find this content, right?
Yeah, ready-made link to the marketplace to get. Oh, I have a copy of that too.
That's it. And I saw Hiker's coat, and I said, "Oh, that's such a great duster, long black. Looks so cool." And of course, I was able to find it quite easily. And then the top hat reminded me of the fantasy fair that I just spent 10 days, at LitFest at the fantasy fair. So. And I got all the hats this year from the gacha. So so I'm wearing a top hat in space, and it felt very connected. I felt like I was myself. Yeah.
I think, yes, I think I acquired a top hat. I used to wear a top hat in Second Life for years and years. But I didn't even know, I still had a noob skin, but I disguised it with a top hat.
That's it. That's it.
Before various women attacked me and said, no.
Well, I don't know if you got it.
They all descended on me and said, "We have got to get you properly dressed." Eventually,
and now look at you, right?
And now look at me, yeah.
At the fantasy fair, the top hats this year looked like the builds. So the entire region sitting on top of your hat, and I kind of liked that because it was like I had a souvenir, a piece of the experience. So now I'm starting to think that way in terms of my hats, what kind of experiences I want to put on them.
I don't know, it was Sapphire Designing Worlds or something. Gave me a hat once that was like that. They literally saved a miniature version of the entire build that we've been at. A tiny miniature. And then it was just stuck on the top of the top hat, and another wonderful top hat.
Well, see, she ran LitFest this year, the literary festival that went at the same time. So we had a Shakespeare Day and a Tolkien Day and all of that, and we were in the Shire for it. It was just called the Hill.
Yeah.
But anyway, so space was a very smooth experience. It was very easy to get in. And then, of course, you have this ability, even in the browser-based version, which I was using, to click your home, and it takes you to this really nice-looking empty home, right, where you can then start populating it with your stuff. That was really cool.
Okay, I have some good news, by the way. I think we have Adam. So I'm going to add him to the Skype call, even though he isn't here yet. He'll be in his desk in 3 minutes. Okay. I'll need to tell him how to get into use his OpenSim avatar and get over here.
Great. I sent him a message while you were talking earlier, so I'm so glad he was able to get That's awesome.
I'm actually just looking at the message now, because when did he say he'd be back at his desk in 3 minutes? That was at 49. Right, I'll wait for him to and okay.
In the meantime, I have a question.
Yeah. Please, yes. Carry on with James. I'll just type this in while we're doing it.
I'm just curious. Are there any video recordings of the event? I'm so curious to see some of the interface and the interactions.
Yeah, Hiker has some. I'm going to turn it back over to her, but I was just perving her list in the conference because she had a conference session that pulled it out. It even shows a photo in the program. Over to you, Hiker.
We're recording all of the events, and I basically publish them on the program in real time, more or less. Within an hour or two, the recording link is up. So at the moment, all of the recordings are up on the main program, and so everybody can watch anything they like.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thanks.
Oops. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I hope I'm giving him the
Oops.
right
I
address.
just had one question, Mel. Sorry.
Yes, okay. Pathfinder.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, you're very good, inquisitive old chap. Have you got any questions for Heike, and particularly Lyr, while she's still here?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
No.
I had something to add there. Mel.
Lyr, carry
I
on.
was looking at the program, and Hiker, as she said, they're all the sessions are recorded. But in particular, at 3 p.m. on Friday, the 3 p.m. GMT session was set in space. There's an image of it, and it shows Rohan Freeman from Signwave Space, the director. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming, Hiker, that was is that a recording you did in space?
Well, this was the grand opening just after the first publisher gave the keynote, almost the opening keynote of the conference. We all went into space after his keynote, and that was the grand opening of the 3D virtual space. And I informed the publishers that I'd managed to get it off the ground because it was a really last-minute thing, and Rowan helped greatly. Then he actually, instead of giving me the file for me to learn how to upload it on the creator server, and then from the creator server to the live server as they are doing it, and the approval process, he said, look, I'm doing it for you because I was stressed out with pre-conference preparations, and then he did it for me. And so the grand opening was on Friday, and then since then we did over the period of the last 3 days, we encouraged people 3 or 4 times as a group to go in there, have a look at the books, especially the second publisher that he was on our Saturday morning, but they're in Japan. They run a big teacher training center in Japan. And so they came into space. We again screen shared. I screen shared a number of times my desktop, showing people how to get in, helping them, and also getting feedback from some who couldn't. At the moment, the mobile client is still not working. So mobile users, and there's a couple of mobile users in Adobe Connect every time from countries like Egypt and South America, and they couldn't enter space, so they were happy to watch the screen sharing that I did in Adobe Connect.
Very
Wonderful.
You know, there's something else. I've just realised that we haven't actually got Adam in Skype. He was talking to you, Heike, wasn't it? You were you were putting something in here.
Oh, that was me, Lyr, and I'm going to say goodbye too. Bye, guys.
Okay.
Bye,
Lyr, thank you very much.
Lyr did a wonderful session on virtual realities and language learning. You have to watch it.
Okay, I'm just trying to sort myself out here because was it you, Heike, who sent me a message saying that from Adam? Or have I got something?
I actually haven't got him on Skype chat. I've got on Skype as a friend is
something like
Sean.
That was me, Mel.
Oh, hey guys, I will be at my desk in 3 minutes. Oh, right, okay, but I can't see him at his desk. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but presumably that means he's en route.
He is, if you have him on Skype, then perhaps you could add him.
Yeah, I have him on Skype. This is Lyr.
Could you add him? Okay, great.
Yeah. Oh,
I don't have him as friend.
Okay, I sent him a request for this channel earlier, and he's not showing up. I have him on another Skype, but he's not showing up in it. But we will see. Okay, now the other thing that I found was great, although it was slightly glitchy, is that I loaded space on the web, I guess via probably Safari browser, on my iPad, and it just looked gorgeous. Unfortunately, the navigation touch to walk and stuff didn't actually work. I think if I'd had the keyboard plugged in, it would have actually worked from the keyboard. But it looks like they haven't got fully to grips with the the method of walking yet. But that to me was a great bonus because a lot of the time I'm scanning news and stuff like that. And I'm sort of, frankly, lying around, lounging around semi-horizontally on my iPad. And the idea that I could actually log into one of my places and do stuff from the iPad without sort of coming over to the workstations here is actually a bit of a dream come true. I mean, I don't want to vegetate, but it's convenient. And I thought that can end up being a real bonus because increasingly, I know it's mostly phones, but people are using Android and iOS a lot, and if you can actually access a world, even if it's on a fairly small screen, as that method, I mean, I think that could result in quite a big take up, especially if it's a dedicated app rather than just a web page embed. You would agree? I take it.
I would agree too, Mel. And the use of a touchscreen I find really fascinating. I've run both OpenSim, Second Life, and on the Windows tablet, and then I've run Lumia on the Android tablet. And using the touchscreen is still a very strange experience to try and move an avatar around. I think probably the best way of moving was, clicking on a point on the land and having your avatar move to that point was most effective.
Yeah.
I think it has something to do with also just the way our brains work when we're thinking about a immersive virtual world. It's like you're in the world.
Adam is here.
Good morning. The idea of touching yourself like that and moving yourself around like that.
That's right. That's right.
Weird.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, we're now joined by Adam. Hi, Adam.
Hi there.
We are in OpenSim, of course. Did you get the message about where to go?
I didn't, actually. I'm sorry about that. Where do you want me?
If you log in with your, any Hypergrid enabled avatar, and then you want to come to login.greatcanadiangrid.ca:8002, and then the region is MetaWorld Broadcasting, 2 words.
Okay. Could someone drop that URL maybe in chat?
Sure. Sure. I will. Right, we are live, so we've been live for now.
Sorry.
I thought it was probably an early breakfast call for you, and I thought something like that. Right. Forgive us, folks. I'm just focusing on typing in an address here for Adam to come to, and I am not the world's best multitasker, I have to say. So I'm going to do the real naughty thing of being slightly silent on air while I get that address over to Adam there.
And
there we
I
are.
was just perhaps whilst you're trying to get Adam across, can I mention something which was my very first question about space? Yes. Does it have voice over IP? Because of course for language learning, that is the most important thing that we need. And the fact that it's on the web client, it's not available, but on the desktop client, it is available. For us, it's been a great wow. We haven't found the microphone as of yet. Where is it?
Yes. Okay. We do have it in our desktop and mobile clients. We don't have it in the WebGL client just yet. We're actually waiting on... we're working with another company that is well recognized in voice solutions, Vivox. I think you all have heard of them. They're actually working with us to get an HTML5 client out, and when we do that, we'll actually have voice over IP in the browser version as well. But it's going to take us a little while. I think they're still doing some work on that, so I don't know. We're expecting it in the next couple of months, but it will be some point this year. We'll have voice over IP in the client. We will actually be doing some tests with Vivox-enabled client as well a bit sooner. We're actually working on that at the moment.
That's intriguing, Adam, because Vivox, of course, is a go-to choice, mostly because it's free for people with less than 50 avatars, I think, in OpenSim. I mean, it only comes unstuck when you've got a real crowd and there's not enough the free server won't handle it. But and of course, it's the one that Second Life still use. So something I really miss. I think it used to be called Slink or something, but always several years ago, Vivox independently working with Linden Lab had an IM sort of chat system that allowed you to log in your avatar and chat to your friends in Second Life, even if you weren't logged into the platform itself. It was like a virtual world Skype. And they do have another web client of some sort, and I'm just wondering about the possibilities of interop, chatting from one word to another via Vivox.
I haven't looked into what would be required to open up voice, but we do actually already do that. We have a XMPP client, XMPP server that you can log in any Jabber compatible chat client. That was one of the things we added a couple of weeks ago, so anyone can log in and actually chat with their friends from out of the world on your phone or whatever else in just a simple lightweight chat client, which I do think is a good idea. I do think it's necessary. Certainly I remember we used to manage all sorts of fun things when I was doing the Azure Islands, and same with Rowan when he's running sine wave animations. It's exactly the situation where you don't really want to have to log in the full client all day, every day, just to answer some questions coming in from customers. So one of the things we said when we did Space was, okay, well, we need to make this easier so that people who want to be able to give customer service and support don't have to be sitting in World all day, every day.
I have to admit, being sat here in OpenSim most of the time, I very rarely go into Second Life these days, but I use... On one of my cheaper machines, I use a program called Radagast, which allows me to log into Second Life and just get messages and sort my inventory. Can't see a thing, but it doesn't matter, somebody can ping me if they want something,
Yeah. Cool.
It's quite useful. Okay. Let's see. Are we getting anywhere with your avatar? I've just realised.
Yes, I've logged into OS Grid. I've got the hypergrid URL. I just need the region name, I think.
Right, it's MetaWorld Space Broadcasting. Oh, and the Great Canadian Grid login I put into Skype for you. Login.greatcanadiangrid.ca. Yeah. I should be able to see you. I should be able to see you downstairs and then TP you up.
Here we go.
Right. Let's just have a look here. Unknown has just entered the region. Very good. I have to find unknown now. Right. Let's just have a look. You see, James, can you see? I can't see unknown. I'm out of radar, aren't I? Up here.
Yeah.
Can you see down? Can you see downstairs?
Let's see.
Oh, actually, while you're filming, that's probably not a good.
No, I'm. Here's an unknown. I'll try a TP for that person.
Yeah.
Yes, got it.
Oh. Right. There we go.
Here we go.
And before I do anything else, I'm going to make sure I've added you as friends with this avatar. Then I could have done it all from scratch. Right. Well. Finally, I can say live on camera, welcome to Adam. He is an unknown, he is an unknown user, and currently a grey statue to me, but he's got a seat. So, welcome. It must be pretty darned early in the morning there.
A little bit early in the morning, yes.
Right. I never know what your hours are because I see you in the sine wave back chat. Sort of all hours of the day and night for me. But yeah. Oh, well, glad we got you here now. We did. It's actually quite funny because I was going to have you in Pathfinder here, and as I was telling our viewers earlier, I was over there. Oh, I wish this screen would stop flickering. Right. I was over there earlier, and I saw Lyr Lobo, who's been with us, but she's had to leave now, in space. And I thought, oh, well, I've got Lyr on every other platform going. Yay, I'll say hello. And lo and behold, I also found Heike here in there too, because they've been running a 3-day conference, web conference, the language learning conference, mostly in Adobe Connect, but they had this book fair set up, I gather, by Rowan and maybe you and whatever in space. And, it was suddenly I was fortuitous, it's the first time I'd actually been into space using the viewer and actually found an event with any substantial number of people in, except for the Q&As and things. So I thought, wow, I've got to get them over here and see what they think of the platform. So
yeah.
So Lyr was very keen. We were describing the. I endeavoured to give a bit of an explanation about, what you can do with Room Edit and your inventory and how you get things in the marketplace. But for heavy creation, you needed to use Unity and stuff like that. And but she was saying, as an attendee of the book fair, it was just so easy. They were using the WebGL client. It was easy to get there. Multitasking. It was only a minute or two to log in. Click to walk, take a seat, all that stuff was very smooth. And apparently they've been using it throughout the Adobe Connect conference as a sort of back room to lounge around in.
That's very cool. Yeah, I was actually away this weekend, but I'm really glad to hear that worked out well. We've really tried to make the sort of WebGL client exactly do that you can just get anyone in, especially the non-technical people who haven't used a virtual world client before, not having to install something and then figure out how to teleport to a particular location. I think is a big deal for a lot of people using virtual worlds or trying to use virtual worlds for more serious applications.
Yeah, as you know, of course, I should explain to everybody, Adam, that you are really one of the founding fathers of OpenSim as well, despite working for Sidewave and being CEO of Space Now. We've had a lot of discussion recently. I don't know whether we talked about this before, but the idea that somehow we could get the hypergrid and OpenSim regions somehow up into a WebGL based viewer, that kind of lightweight experience, whereas the lightweight viewer does everything you need to do, but nothing complicated like building and uploading and stuff. And it's Pathfinder. Are you still here, Path, by the way?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Pathfinder was saying earlier how wonderful it was that he worked with Reaction Grid on a Unity-based project called Jibe some time ago,
yes,
and he was saying he went into space, and it was like what Jibe should have been. Those are your words, Pathfinder. I think it was just Exactly. And I think it exemplified, not only the ease of access because of the web client, but even the downloadable client. It's if you buy things from the inventory and stuff like that, you can obviously treat it a bit like you do Second Life, where you take something you've bought or been given presumably, and then res it in your little room. And be it a piece of furniture or putting on some clothes or stuff like, you can customize things very easily within the viewer. You can't, you can rearrange your furniture, but you can't sort of you can't collaborate on a redesign of the city with somebody else who's visiting you, because you don't share the objects in that sense. But then you've got this whole parallel operation where you can create whole regions or whole complexes, or indeed quests and things, using the Unity engine, which I must admit yours truly has not really got to grips with. I've uploaded a sofa, but I can't get it to spawn for me, even though it's appeared in my inventory. And I've uploaded a region with help from Rowan, but it's not really. It's just a plane with the city on it. We'll get there eventually, studio wise, but that takes it to a whole new level. And I also mentioned to folks earlier that I was talking to Philip Rosedale earlier in the week in a High Fidelity meetup, where I can't get any graphics, by the way, despite what they say, although I can talk my heart off. So I was saying that there is this trend, even with Second Life and OpenSim, I guess since the advent of Mesh, which I see growing, where people are increasingly authoring offline and saving their creations one way or another, with the idea that they can deploy the same thing to multiple platforms wherever they want. You can take the Mesh, you can convert it for upload to Second Life, you can convert it for upload to OpenSim, you can upload it via the space client to space, presumably. Yep. And you can't get it to High Fidelity that way, but you have to actually take it into their engine. But And the same with Linden Labs Sansar. They're building their own engine. It's just no surprise they've been delayed yet again. So but it seems that it seems that with space, using the Unity engine means you are immediately on a level playing field with a whole load of other operators. So people will have assets in Unity already. If they
I'm probably a little bit biased, but I think actually Unity takes us a bit further than everyone else. It's such a powerful engine. It's really the Unity, Unreal, both really powerful game engines, and they give us such a huge leg up on every single feature. Like we can immediately say to users, hey, yes, we do have cloth physics, and hey, yes, we've got baked static global illumination, all sorts of other pretty little features that take thousands of developers to build. Unity has somewhere around 2,000 or more staff working full-time on Unity. Huge number of QA people, a huge number of developers. I think actually of the software engineers count, it's probably a couple of hundred, but it's right up there. It means that we get to sort of add those into our own developer team by proxy. So every 3 months we get the Unity upgrade with whatever new features they've added. We've just done 5.6 in the last couple of days. Yeah. We got a whole new light tracing, light mapping method, which basically just lets you bake lighting from within the editor, so you can lay out your scene, get it looking at perfect, click one button, and get a fantastic baked lighting layout. They've added a whole bunch of features to make that better in 5.6, and every 3 months we get something else that they've added that just suddenly improves everything.
I've been getting some help from Joey Obama, is his name. He's kind of my assigned mentor, and he's checked in a few times. But again, it's like everything else. So there's a speed of light I don't always understand. But it's quite fascinating. I got a Unity update, and of course, I've ended up with the latest Unity. And I then had to go to your site and get your beta, which of course is the only one that's compatible with the update. And I'm still no further on, but it does seem suddenly I've got a whole load of new facilities in Unity. I don't know what to do with them, but I'm very conscious that and there's a whole what sounds like a movie timeline or something in it too. I get a cine something.
We've got a few tools there. We've already. So one of the other perks of using Unity is that we can take all these assets that other people have made and make them compatible with our own platforms. There's one that we're compatible with called USequencer that gives you a full timeline editing system. So basically you can create, I guess, like a movie timeline of sorts of objects animating and all the rest of that. And add that to things like quests, so you can do cutscenes. All those sorts of things can be done there. Unity themselves are adding a facility that's very similar in the very next update. So we are looking forward to that one, because that one will be a bit more stable, because it'll be directly supported with Unity. You don't need to get any third-party assets to do it with, which will be great. And I'm really looking forward to when that comes out. Somewhere around June, I think.
Yeah, I have to say that if
working directly with Unity on this one, on the developments.
To a degree. I mean, Unity work with everyone, so I'm fairly active communicating with a few Unity developers. I think they hate me at this point for the amount of requests and things that I send their way, but they are a fantastic company to build off, because they do provide great support to us.
I can never forget, actually. I think you might well have been there, Adam, because I think you were in the UK at the time. It was several years ago. There was one of these virtual world conferences that was going on at the time. There were quite a few. Oh, I think it was one. There would have been a bomb or something, and they couldn't the regular venue.
Murder or something, and they had to close the venue.
Yeah, and so they shifted it all over to somewhere else. I forget where it was. One of the clubs in town, I think.
Yeah, the hospital or something like that.
Yeah, but I remember the guys from Unity, and this is a good few years. That's right, the hospital. The guys from Unity were there wandering around, but there was this guy, he was Italian, showing off his virtual world and, promoting it for all the heck, like, it was his own build and, it was his future virtual world. And the guys from Unity wandered by and say, "Oh, there's one of ours." And the poor guy's deflated look, because all he'd done is he'd built a thing in Unity and is promoting it as his world. I mean, I suppose that's what you're doing in a more advanced way, but it was just so funny because I forget who they were from Unity at that time, but they recognized immediately something that had been authored in their platform, And of course they had, I don't know whether you go to them or follow them online. Unity just had a very big conference in online. There's a lot of videos up from them at the moment, and a keynote at it wasn't the Unity's own one, it was another one last week.
I think it was VR something. Yeah, I did see that. I get my new Vive tomorrow. We've got Oculus dev kits here that they're a bit old. So I get my new one tomorrow. Actually, I'm looking forward to playing with it.
Yeah, I've kind of. I have a funny feeling, and again, I was saying this to the high fidelity folks. It's and from the video chat on the program midweek, I could see this was a common thread from people who couldn't get Inworld to see anything properly, like me. I was talking, but I had no idea where I was. I don't know if it said I wasn't on the stage when I was meant to be. They were in the chat saying that this may be the great new virtual world and all that, but you can't afford to just sit around like geeks with your headsets, and people are going to want to use this stuff on flat screens and mobiles and all over the place, and it's going to be a long while before, and if ever, people are going to want to constantly put headsets on, even if they become visors that you can flip above your head and pairs of glasses. It's like, we all love our music headphones, but we don't wear them all the while, we take breaks, and, it's okay for gamers and arcade installations and things like that. The headsets are great, and the things that have been done with them. And, hardcore people who are going to set up rooms with all their Vive tracking and stuff like that, fair enough. But I think it'd be very dangerous, and obviously Space isn't doing this, to rely on an audience like that, because we don't really know how it's going to go. I mean, the uphill curve is the techie people at the moment. It's not the consumer outside of the gamers.
Yeah, I have the same thoughts. I don't think that VR is quite ready for sort of mass market adoption. It'll be great when the prices come down. I think that'll be a big drop in the barriers to entry. But there's all sorts of issues with motion sickness still. And you do need a very expensive computer at the moment to be able to run VR. I hate to think, I just bought a new PC. I really hate to think that everyone would have to go and spend the same amount on getting a high-end PC just to get VR working in an acceptable frame rate, because VR is so critical to have insanely high frame rates and smooth frame rates to avoid motion sickness. And I think that's got two problems. One is that you have to maintain a very high frame rate, and that means you actually got to cut detail. So actually for instance, Space, to get 120 FPS, we have to switch off a few things. So we might have to switch off real-time reflections, because they basically halve your frame rate when we do real-time reflections, and all sorts of things. So it's actually, there's not just the pure aspect you got to buy a high-end machine, but we've actually got to start cutting back on things like quality in order to get there. Because when you're running on a PC screen, it doesn't really matter if your frame rate dips down to 15 or 20 frames per second for a little bit, because you're on a screen that's not going to make you sick. But you do that in VR, and suddenly we've got people feeling very unwell very quickly.
Adam, if you have a middle mouse button, if you just press it, it probably make your lips.
Oh, there you go. Yes, there we go.
Is that okay, James?
Yep, that's good.
So we were just noticing that you didn't have lip flap, as we call it.
Yes, I'm afraid I've been out of the Second Life and OpenSim space for a little while, so I forgot a few things.
Yeah, so quite understandable. Yeah. So I mean, I don't think we know where these things are going. I think the focus really, a lot of the criticism of VR is where's the content. Because 360 video photo panoramas and 360 videos are not really, they're not immersive VR. They are. That's the problem. They're not participatory environments, really. They are just they're a three-dimensional experience, just like a movie is a 2D one. There's nothing wrong with them, but Hollywood and filmmakers and everybody else are really struggling to find ways of storytelling, using the field. I mean, I actually think the easiest guide is to actually go back to real life theatre, where you instead of imagining attending a concert in the round where they're in the center and the seats are around the outside, think of yourself as a group of seats in the middle where the stage surrounds you. And think of storytelling in terms of the way people will move in context to where you are. So you will follow people using, you'll follow the action by turning and things like that, rather than having it imposed upon you, if that makes any sense. But it's out. I can imagine going to a cinema and plonking on a headset and having a 3D experience once they've got to grips with being able to tell a story that is more than 15 minutes that will work. I mean, look at the flop that 3D TV has been. Everybody still loves their TV, it seems, but the hype around 3D TV has just vanished almost, because it's fit for its purpose. People didn't really want all the rest of the stuff, except once the novelty had worn off. I've got a cardboard type headset, made of plastic but cardboard, and it's gathering dust, because after I tried out all the VR apps I could find for 5 minutes each and almost roasted the phone I used, the novelty had worn off, if you see what I mean. I appreciated what it was all about, but really didn't want to stay in there for so long.
It's funny because we did a web conference on virtual, well, it was immersive learning, just in March, and we had this big mega podium discussion from Deutsche Welle, which is almost like the BBC Learning for Germany. And then during that time, I mentioned that I'd bought a Samsung Gear and 6 months ago, and I was really, really keen on using it, and now it's been sitting in the chest or drawer, and they picked up on it, and they had a real laugh at it, because then they said, well, if you don't need it, you can send it to us, to Deutsche Welle, and we'll put it out for a prize, so raffle it off.
Or donate it to a school or somebody, because I can see it being used, I can't see it being used in the workplace like offices. But on the other hand, there's some fascinating stuff where like engineers use it, because they can see into the detail of an engine. This isn't augmented reality, but they have things virtually in front of them that are tied to the real thing, and they can get into a lot finer detail and stuff while they're working in the headset. And I can see practical things like that, and also treating people for mental health issues and anxiety and things. Apparently they can do things by immersing them in full VR. They use the full facet immersion to take people out of the space they're in, basically, to cure them. So I can see a lot of use cases there, but these aren't the use cases of, having one between your sitting room chairs and pulling it out every 5 minutes.
Adam, can I ask you, when do you get the mobile client going?
Okay, we've got those in testing. We've actually been testing them since late last year. I've been handing out Android client links. It is actually our next item on our development list, along with a few other things. We have that actually probably in the next couple of months, not a couple of months, probably the next couple of weeks, we'll be handing out more official test viewers off the website rather than just in our developer chat. I toss one out every couple of weeks because we think that it's nearly done. There's been some issues with sort of rescaling and resizing the interface to make it work. Right now, it's definitely best on tablet rather than phone. But if you've got a big phone, then it's probably okay. But there is all the issues of resizing and reshaping buttons and things to make them all work in the client, because all the functionality is there and it works today. It's just a matter of making the UI experience a bit better, and that will probably be an ongoing thing after we release it as well. So we'll probably release an initial client with that still needs some more adaptation, and then over the next year or two, we'll actually get into something that's really very mobile centric on our mobile client.
Can I ask again? Sorry,
yes.
Are you still in beta? What you would call it, or is that already the public stage that you've released the software?
No, we're definitely in beta. We've still got all sorts of things that we want to add and fix and change before we're sort of happy slapping a 1.0 label on. My guess is at this stage we'll probably do it about mid next year. That'll be when we go out of beta, but we do have to get a few things in place before we're really happy taking that label off.
Okay, well, I want to be on the testing channel for that, but I did say to people earlier, one thing I was really impressed with, even though it didn't work per se, was I loaded it in, I guess it was probably Safari on my iPad Pro, which is slightly bigger than the others. It did look gorgeous. I mean, it's basically the WebGL version loading into the iPad. The only problem was the touching the screen to try and do the click to walk didn't work. So I couldn't move and I had no interface, but I was just looking at it. I was sort of looking at it and thinking, "Ooh, yay!" I
did not know it worked on there, but
yeah, and I think it was Rowan or Joey said, "Well, I didn't know it worked on the iPad." Work might be put the wrong word, but it opened in the browser. It just it didn't respond to touch basically. But
yeah, no, I can
understand. I understand that you've been working on this for 7-8 years. Rowan tells me, and only recently you've come into beta, and now. And I mean, what made you wait such a long time?
Well, it's because we weren't officially working on Space as a product for third-party developers. So what happened was we actually built, so if we can go back sort of in our company history, back in about 2010, I began to disappear from the OpenSim community to start working on this. I think that my absence may have gone noticed around that time. And what we did was we actually started building Space specifically for our own use. So we used to get, we did a lot of brand company deployments, people who want their own virtual worlds for a particular brand or product. And we used to try and sell them on Second Life, and it sort of never really worked out. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but accessibility was a huge one. Not being able to drop people straight into a dedicated environment, not having to get them to learn a viewer and whatever. So we actually did a whole bunch of deployments for a lot of institutions on private virtual worlds, and that was probably the bulk of that 7 years. So we did one for an Indian company called Gojio. We did one for the Spanish national broadcaster RTVE. We did a personal, well, not personal, but a company project doing a live music system called Res Live that eventually renamed to Wet FM.
I remember that one. Yes.
Yes, yeah. So that's basically where we've been. So technically, we've been carrying the same platform across. Most of it's been rewritten since that first version. I think there's maybe like 1,000 or 2,000 lines of code that have ported straight through from 2010 to today. But a lot of what we've done has been basically building and refining it for our own use. And about 2 years ago, we decided, back in 2015, we decided that actually this would be really cool if we let third-party developers grab our tools. So we spent about a year or so getting the tools ready for end users and developers to actually start using for themselves. And then at the end of August last year, we opened those up to our first creators. We handed out the developer tools for the first time. And now we're sort of sitting back and working out what they need and what we need to support to make this better.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I wasn't sure about that, whether it was beta or public. But I mean, there is obviously, especially the Unity updates and stuff like that. It's there's presumably always going to be a bit of handover time while you update, the engine with two releases.
We've tried to work out how we can stabilize those, because we really went through the first major Unity release back in February, where we did our first update. So we went from 5.3 up to 5.5. We actually skipped over 5.4 because it was causing nothing but problems with no benefit. And basically we broke a lot of things when we did our first major update with Unity. So we looked at ways we can make that better. Our 5.6 update, which we just did, went a lot smoother. We actually built a whole bunch of infrastructure for letting us run multiple Unity versions in parallel, so that developers could work on whichever version of Unity is stable for them, and then upgrade at their leisure. And that's the process we'll go going forward. So we'll probably actually have the transition times, we'll extend them out a bit. So this transition we did was about 2 weeks. So we had about a week where people were pushing onto 5.6 and not into 5.5. But next time around, we'll probably minimize that down to a couple of days. So it might be only like 1 or 2 days that we run it at that level. And then you can optionally, prior to that, you can upload to either channel and test which one works best for you.
I'm just thinking, and forgive me if this is me being stupid, because it probably is, but yeah, it was with Rowan. I successfully uploaded a wall under settee to sit on without a mesh collider working, and a, what do you call it, skybox behind it. And that's up there at the moment. I haven't tried to do anything else since the upgrade, but I noticed that when I'm previewing what I've done more on it now offline, the skybox, for example, has completely disappeared. And I have a feeling that if I re-uploaded the latest version of what I've got offline,
you probably flipped it off in Unity. Unity has a background button. There's just a single little button that's on the toolbar that you just need to push, and that will come back after that.
Oh, something simple. Okay, I was wondering if it was going to be for the future.
No. It'll be fine, I'm sure.
So you think, in your experience, Unity, new versions of Unity are pretty much backwards compatible with older ones?
Almost always, yeah. We've been upgrading the same content since Unity 2. So we've actually got content in space right now that is the better part of 7 or 8 years old. And that still works.
Right. And the other thing I've found, and I'm only asking this because it might be a glitch other people have got, is I uploaded this city I had, which Rowan really liked actually, as a virtual good. And I finally got to grips with that. It appeared in my inventory, but it won't spawn.
Okay, you might need to just check the upload settings. You've got a whole bunch of options for what kind of item it is. You might need to just set it as the right type. So the spawns, there's a class called spawnables, generics, and vehicles. Those kinds of ones can be spawned anywhere. Whereas if it's uploaded as furniture, you need to use the Inworld build tools to place it.
Yeah, it was uploaded as furniture, and it's
then you need to use the edit room mode, and it'll let you spawn it in there. The reason for that is we've got a whole bunch of extra tools that show up in the furniture placement, like you can align furniture to walls, also things like that just happen automatically, and it's designed to work with the Inworld build tools.
Right. Oh, if I have any problems, I'll get back off air in the back channels. Now,
John seems to want to disappear in 5 minutes. Can I ask John a question?
Yeah, I have to head out. Sure.
Yeah. Yes.
John, which is the kind of world that you're in mostly these days?
That's a really good question. I mean, I do some contracting work in OpenSim, specifically with educators who run, private grids using Open Simulator. But I also spend a lot of time in Unity, not just in really just in Unity, just in general, just playing around in Unity as on its own. I mean, I've dabbled in using Unity to build environments for VR chat, and most recently, and I'm going to start working with. I want to start working with space, but I also just spend a lot of time just in Unity, just building stuff from scratch. And in particular, I love the Unity Asset Store so much because I just love to get stuff on the Unity Asset Store and then pull it apart and see how it works. I just love doing that, and there are just so many amazing pieces of content on the Unity Asset Store that you can learn from, and there's the ability built into Unity to create multi-user environments, and so I mean I would say it's really kind of half and half. Half my time is tinkering around in Unity, and half of it is tinkering around in OpenSim itself. I'll also play around in Unreal, but I just like Unity better. I don't know, I just like how Unity feels more, and maybe it's because I used it before I started using Unreal. But I'm terrible at modeling. Blender made me cry, and I tried 3D Studio Max, and I really just don't like it. I'm much more of a level designer than anything else. I'm not a modeler. And Unity is all for level design. It's like I don't focus on building a car from scratch, but I focus on finding car models and then scripting them so they're interactable. You can interact with them and things like that. So I just love tinkering around with the level design capabilities of Unity. And then and the nice thing is then, like for example, like when I discovered VR chat, all those skills were directly translatable. It's like just download this plugin for VR chat, and you can upload your environments to VR chat and have multi-user VR-based environments. And so yeah, and Unity is so much easier to learn than Blender. So like if people have ever tried to do any kind of 3D modeling, I think it's so much easier. And just spend time on the Unity Asset Store buying stuff or finding free stuff. Because a lot of the content creators on the Asset Store have like, here's all my stuff for sale, and here are a few freebies so that you can get a sense of my skills, so that you can download the free stuff. And you just learn so much from tinkering with content like that.
And you can also the Asset Store is wonderful, but you can also import a whole load of stuff. And one thing that I've been looking at is that there are a number of steps involved, but you could, for example, export a complete region, an OAR file, from Open Simulator. And there's ways of converting that OAL file to come into Unity as a complete, asset or a complete build for uploading elsewhere. So
even just models themselves. I'll give you a little secret is that if I absolutely need to build a 3D model for Unity or Unreal, I build it in OpenSim and I export it as a mesh model, and there you go. And I pull it into, Unity or Unreal.
Yeah, I quite like that idea. Build with prims and then tweak in Unity.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Before you go, Pathfinder, I hope I can prevail on you for a couple of seconds, though, because a couple of minutes actually. One thing Rowan has mentioned quite a lot, and I wanted to bring up with Adam is that obviously looking for users and creators and clients, full stop. But Rowan particularly mentioned that they have had, for Space has had a lot of interest from educators.
Yeah.
And of course, this is our common area with Heike here and you, John. Are you aware of that, Adam, or is that more?
Definitely Rowan talks with more of the educators than I do. I certainly do, because I do the tech support for a lot of our creators. Whenever someone is totally stuck, I'll get in there and help out. I know we've got a huge number of educators who are interested. I don't know how many I can talk about, because I don't know if they want us to talk about them yet. Yeah. But I know that, for instance, Austin Tate up at Edinburgh University has been a big user, and there's quite a few other ones who are very active in space and constantly chatting in our developer chat.
Yes, I've seen that. I think it's it is. I'm asking really because I know that this show gets a lot of listeners who are actually in the education field. Virtual world users, but educators do see quite a lot of us, and I just wonder if there's anything really pertinent to address to them. The costs, of course, are also, because we do cover that kind of issue now and again, are perfectly reasonable, aren't they? I mean, you basically land in space can be, or, it's not like a region open sim, it can be almost any size. And obviously it's going to cost you, at the moment the land doesn't really cost you at all, does it? It's just over and above a certain weight on that land, as it were. Think of it as a prim allowance, though it isn't. That's where the money comes in. If you use up more than your megabyte quota or whatever, you start paying.
Pretty much, yeah. So once you start paying, you can get more than one region to your name, and you can get a bigger quota and things like that. Really, though, I think for a lot of users, our pricing is pretty reasonable. You can fit quite a lot of content within the free tier, especially when you start using things like substances and other procedural materials. You can do all sorts of stuff to squish a really high detailed region into a tiny file size. Like our Welcome Center region, that one's I think only half the free quota we have sitting in there. So you can do a lot with it, and I do think that our pricing is a bit more friendly to educators. And the first pricing tier starts at I think about $5 a month, and then it goes up to $15 a month, and so on and so forth. But when you go up to sort of $70 a month, which is when you're spending sort of comparable amounts to virtual worlds which shall go nameless, you get 10 very large regions. So you get 10 regions that can fit 100 concurrent in them each, and 2 gig of storage space for each region, which is really plenty. No one's come close to using anywhere near that yet. So it's sort of at that point, that's really you running a large business off space, not really for personal users.
Can I ask a question about the interoperability of things? If I buy things from the Unity 3 asset store, could I import them into space?
Generally, yes. There's a few restrictions, which are there's two main restrictions. One is scripted content from the asset store. It needs to be explicitly whitelisted by us, and there's a few reasons for that. But the biggest one is that we don't want people adding assets to their regions that wipe the contents of everyone's hard disk who comes up and visits them. So scripted content needs to be explicitly whitelisted and integrated by us. Sometimes we'll actually have to do further work. We'll have to explicitly add some patching support for it. So scripted content you have to be a little bit careful of. The other thing you have to watch for is that we won't allow you to resell content off the Unity asset store. So you can't just go buy a whole bunch of packages off the asset store and upload it into our marketplace. That goes against our creator rules. But besides that, it's free to use. If you're doing it in your personal region or you're integrating the content into a much larger environment, then that's all okay.
There are also a lot of marketplaces that you can go to get Unity assets other than Unity's. And in my experience, it's usually pretty clear when you download an object file or a DAE file or whatever it is. Some of them are completely open licensed to use and do what you want with, but others will, although they're free, will specify that whatever use you make to them has a visible creator accreditation. So you presumably want to stay clear of those unless you want labels all over your content with the creator's name on it.
Yeah, we're definitely big believers in people following the license that they're given on the content that they bring into space. But that's also partly because we want to have a better community for creators to work with. Because obviously the piracy and all the sorts of things like that are a huge problem in virtual worlds. So it'd be great if we can sort of stamp that out at a policy level rather than trying to have to do it at a technical level, which is doomed to failure.
So, Pathfinder, I know you said you had to go. Are you going to be a neighbor in space shortly?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really want to. Again, I think it's just really beautiful to see a lot of the things that I had kind of dreamt about for the Reaction Grid's Jibe platform to do is it's being done or has been already done in space. And I think it's also really just refreshing too with there's so much focus now on environments that are designed for VR first and foremost, and maybe they and maybe getting you could also run it on a screen, but it's designed really for VR. It's refreshing to see this platform be something that's designed for screens first and foremost, and mobile devices and portability with HTML5 and WebGL, and then down the line potentially working with things like VR, but not that as an exclusive focus, because I think that's misguided. Frankly, I think it's designing for a future that is very, as the Magic 8 Ball will say, uncertain.
Isn't it always?
Yeah, but I mean, but the power of of providing these environments across a wide range of screens, mobile devices, tablet devices, desktops, and all that. That's really, I think that's where it's at, and I think it's a strategy that will make this, very future-proof. So, yeah, I'll be there. I'm just gonna. I just have to have some time building in it. So,
I'd also.
You can listen to. Oh, go on.
No, sorry, Kevin, Adam. Yeah.
I was just going to say you can listen to the dulcet tones of Rowan's video tutorials. He's got a lot of them. I think it does make the process a bit simpler.
Yeah, and I've met with Rowan a couple of times too. He gave me a really good tour of things a few weeks ago. So.
Awesome.
And I was at one of the earlier educator meetups, and I think a lot of what educators are doing is a lot of them they're interested, but at the same time they're also just like surveying the landscape. I think, so I think it's at that crucial earliest stage where they're surveying the landscape and figuring out what they need to do to be able to actually start creating and sharing environments in this platform. But it's definitely interesting early times.
Back at the top of the show, I mentioned that I was sort of seeing this trend to amongst designers, particularly for be it just clothing for Second Life or builds or furniture, the idea of creating offline and deploying anywhere. And obviously we're talking about space quite a bit today, especially with Adam, but you, Pathfinder, have obviously probably got a whole disk full of Unity assets you've been playing with. One of the dream cases there, of course, is that let's say you build an educator and you build a classroom or a few classrooms, a whole school, and you want to put it online. Obviously, you can put it online in space because it is a simple matter of getting the space plugin or package, as it's called, and then uploading it. But back at the Virtual World's Best Practices conference the other week, I forget the exact names of the people concerned, but we had one keynote. It was Chris Deed, who was doing a very similar education package based in America. And Pathfinder has also mentioned VR chat, for example. So no offense to you, Adam, but space isn't the only platform out there. And of course, the beauty of shifting your thinking, as it were, to building offline is that you could possibly end up with, this school or classroom or whatever. And according to need, you could actually deploy it to a number of different places. So, you may want to hold classes in space for people who are using space, but equally you might want to deploy an identical copy almost of the same build to another platform because there's another target audience there that doesn't overlap. And that's not interoperability as such, although I kind of like to think that at one point you'll be able to have
portability, I think.
Portability, yeah. And I'd like to think at some point you could have a build, for example, that not only was a build with its scripts and stuff like that, that might actually have built-in communication facilities where you could voice chat between your classroom on space and your classroom in, say, VR chat. Don't think you put a classroom there actually, but for example, if there was, Adam would know more about this, but maybe it's voice, however the voice transmits over the web or something. If it uses HTTP, it could presumably eventually you could make a phone call from inside space to somebody inside another Unity style platform.
Probably not on voice chat specifically, just because it is so heavily tied to the platform. But I mean, we do open XMPP. We're about to release the details on how to get into regions and things on XMPP client as well. So you can hop into region and global chats. But for now, it is locked to the instant messaging. But I mean, presumably someone could take that and build another client in another Unity world, and if someone had uploaded the content there, they could link it across those boundaries that we offer.
That is actually an important question to ask you. Everybody who is a fan of OpenSim and the hypergrid, I guess one of the most, apart from the sort of creative freedom they think they have, one of the most popular comments you hear is, it is great being outside that corporate walled garden of you know who, which is otherwise very similar sort of environment. And a lot of people listening will probably think, well, OpenSim and hypergrid, hey, they haven't spoken about that today because you're talking about another closed grid, and they might say something like that about high fidelity, or even though it has a lot of open source components. To what extent, I know Rowan had his own feelings on this, but to what extent do you feel space will remain, how should I say, a walled garden? Or how open would it be ultimately to, not totally, but different levels of interoperability outside the sine wave conclave, so to speak?
It depends a little bit on how this works, because we do want to. We've got the problem that we absolutely want to support creators who build and buy stuff through our systems, and I know that there is sort of the moment we begin to tear down some of those walls, we make it a lot easier for people to come in and grab things. So look, any technical solution is completely, I won't say pointless, but certainly easily defeated. So obviously that it's not perfectly, but right now when you do things like scripted and interactive content, it really does only work in space for that kind of setup. So it's a hard one to say because we do have these conflicting needs and demands. Obviously, I do support the idea of sort of the big open source interoperable metaverse. I got involved with OpenSim to begin with, very much on that backbone. So it's a hard one to say. I'm absolutely okay opening the walls where it is something that makes sense for all of our users. Where it only makes sense for some of our users, then we've got to weigh up the sort of the needs and requirements of each group accordingly. But I think that at least sort of core marketplace functionalities, anything where you're buying and transmitting assets around, that kind of thing is probably going to be locked down for the time being. How it'll look in 2 years' time, for example, if we can figure out an elegant way of being able to handle that stuff without interfering with the ability of our creators to create and monetize their work, then it's obviously great. That would be fantastic. But we've just got to sort of solve those problems first, and they're not easy problems to solve. I think that the music and film industries have been fighting with the same issues for a while, and not even at the same level that other virtual worlds have. I mean, content piracy and Second Life, you're not hitting a big company that can spread the losses around. I mean, it can destroy a lot of the smaller creators who are pulling in a couple of $1,000s a month. If they get hit with bad piracy, then suddenly they can lose their livelihoods very easily.
Sure.
Which is something we do want to make sure that we don't repeat those same mistakes.
And I just mentioned there some of the reactions of the users of space that we had in over the weekend, because it was so quite funny that there was a shocking reaction amongst a little group of girls sitting around, sitting on the benches and watching the book fair. They're saying, "Oh my word, you can see how much my clothes cost." Because when you click click on the avatar, and it was like, oh no, that's the secret every woman wants to keep.
This is the fashionista speaking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I must say. Picture in, actually for creators, because it becomes, every customer of yours becomes a walking billboard of I'm wearing whatever by whatever, and it actually, I think it's a good thing for creators because it means that we can easily make good things discoverable. So if one person discovers something, then it's easy for that creator's name to get out there and to build up a customer base.
I'm I'm wondering if it shouldn't be one level down in the profile. But I know the word.
Yeah. Please, not when you click on the profile.
Yeah,
when in the shop, yes, where you discover the clothes, maybe, but
no,
not really on the profile.
I don't mind it in the profile either, like what I'm wearing. I think it's actually a very good idea because I know that when you're in Second Life, for example, or OpenSim, you've got to click on the avatar, you've got to then try and click on the item of clothing, and you've got to find out who the creator is. There's no clue as to where you go and get it. You've then got to make a note of the name of the creator, then you've got to go into the search and see if you can find the creator, and then you've got to go into the creator's pics to see if they've got their store listed. And, you're going all around the... you can go around the Hyperverse just trying to buy a jacket, So I actually think that's quite a good idea. I have to admit, I was very surprised when I opened a window, and the biggest thing in the window was
disagree, Mal, because for a woman, the price tag of her clothes is a secret, honestly.
Well, I think we're going to have to agree to differ there. I'm just thinking in terms of ease of use and functionality. If I want to knit your blouse, I want to be able to do it easily.
I don't want to know how much your hair costs, I want to...
Well, think of it another way. I might have a look at your blouse and think, God, she paid that much for her blouse? You've got to be kidding. I'm not buying it. So your ego is satisfied. You're proven to be wearing an expensive blouse. Anyway,
if that fosters the business, okay.
I forgot what I was going to say now. When I did have another question on hand, and I forgot what it was. Typical. No, I actually, believe it or not, it took me ages to figure out quite how to do that. But I mean, it's not actually until you're at an event like today, where you're surrounded by a lot of other avatars, that you can actually practice clicking on them and see what happens. If you're just in an empty space that you're trying to build or whatever, and there's nothing to click on that does anything, it's a bit disconcerting. I know what the thread I was actually going on. Obviously sine wave. It's like on OpenSim, with the hypergrid now, we got a lot of commercial sims, some of which don't even come on the hypergrid because there are commercial concerns and they lay down their own laws. They might let visitors in, but don't allow their people to go outside and shop on another grid, but they'll have visitors in to attend concerts and stuff. So they kind of restrict it a bit. But as the bottom line, so to speak, I guess from the way I see it, space actually, and I think I caught this from Ebbe Moldberg as far as Linden Labs' new sensor, whenever it happens, is involved. Their bottom line really is going to be based on virtual goods and a kind of tax levied on those virtual goods, because presumably under a similar system to what you could create in Unity, although I know they've got their own close thing. The land costs are fairly immaterial. In other words, deploying the land is, take an evidence build over in space. That is a real life model of the Grand Canyon, which is rather big. And if you play by the book and try and walk across it, it's one object, I think, just the Grand Canyon, but it still takes 6 hours to walk across. So you've got this sort of psychological collision because being knowing how big the land is, but the fact that only the land is there, if you see what I mean. And obviously, if you've got a huge region like that, there's no weight really on your servers. That's not really the money-making avenue, is it? It's going to be the virtual goods.
Yes, so we do the same. I think that we do the same thing as the proposed tax you're talking about. We actually already do that. We do charge a percentage of sales to our creators. We've had a look at sort of what numbers are sustainable in the long term. We picked one that sort of gives us a margin, but also means that creators are making the bulk of the money on the platform, which is our goal. It's very much that we wanted to sit on the side and let creators really monetize things. one of the things we really wanted to get into with our pricing model is to make sure that creators don't have to pay anything. That was something that we really wanted to make sure happened, where creators who build things on our platform, your first region's free, it doesn't cost any money to list on the marketplace, all those bits and pieces. We really tried to do specifically so that the creators can just come in and earn a sort of a passive income if they want to, or they can be more a bit active about it. But ultimately, it's a platform that doesn't require paying an ongoing subscription in order to have the opportunity to sell within it. And we really tried to structure the pricing models and things around that.
And sorry to ask a newbie question, but...
No, go ahead. This is what it's all about.
And the newbie question is just simply, can you create things in this Unity engine, or do you need Blender to create it?
A bit of both. There is, generally speaking, the tool chain that most people would follow would be to use a 3D modeling app like Blender and then bring it into Unity and sort of assemble it. Now, there's a couple of in Unity options now. There's one called Pro Builder, which one of my colleagues, Digvijay, really likes to use. I've been playing with a tool called Archimatics, which is, again, a parametric modeling tool that's built into Unity. If you've got those sorts of extensions, then you can build entirely from start to finish within Unity. There's now even texturing tools in Unity that are pretty good. I've been playing around with another tool called Surforge that's it's got a great integration with those other two tools I mentioned a second ago. That let you sort of texture and model and everything within Unity all as in one big application. And I think that may or may not be the future of where things go. It's very hard to tell because a lot of what we built into our platform ethos is that it's the best tool for the job. And in many cases, when you're doing 3D modeling, Max, Maya, Blender are the best tools for the job. There's no sort of alternatives out there that are any better. Or maybe there is, in which case you can switch over and start using those. So we've sort of tried to build a compatible workflow that works, that you can pick the best tool for the job, use it, and be happy with working with space with those tools and be able to use all their features as best we can.
It's a bit like publishing or doing art, isn't it, really? I mean, you will probably use Painter or Photoshop or something like that to do the art, but if you want to, you would then bring it into a page makeup program for assembling and deploying. And I think Unity clearly fits that assembly sort of. Would you agree, Adam?
Yeah, no, it's kind of like a staging environment, if you will, where you can sort of lay it out in Unity, and then as soon as you're happy with it, click the submit button, and it'll synchronize off with our servers and do all that stuff. But really, the goal is to make this process not just powerful, but also sort of easy and synchronized, that you can work easily. So, for instance, when you're building, you've got a different requirement for things on how your camera works. For example, you really want a sort of a free look mouse view to be able to zoom out to far distances, drag, select a whole bunch of objects, move them around, all those sort of things. And when you do that with I guess you'd say in-world build tools in a lot of clients, those tools are not as good. If you're doing a really big, complicated build, duplicating and rotating and moving around large clumps of objects, aligning them, all those sorts of things, it's a little bit clunky. So one of the great things about working with Unity is you've got these tools that are really robustly built for people doing game level design. And I mean, game level design is a very similar process to building in virtual worlds. You're laying out sort of objects and things that you've been handed off by another artist. And those tools are really well built for people doing those kind of large scale builds. I mean, a game level could have upwards of 100,000, 200,000 objects in it. And being able to place things effectively and efficiently is definitely part of that, those requirements that Unity have had to solve. And we're certainly happy to sort of sit on the back of all the hard work that they've done there to make those tools friendly and good and easy to use.
Of the things you mentioned, actually, I would, from my limited ability to cope with Unity at the moment, the one you mentioned called Pro Builder, which there's a free version on the Unity Asset Store. That's actually, from what I've explored, does seem to be fairly extensive, because you can, like in OpenSim, you can raise a cube or spawn a cube. And you have to go to dialog boxes to add the color you want and things like that. But the nice thing was you can actually, if you don't want it, you can actually paint on one of the surfaces of the cube. So like like with an actual paintbrush. So instead of a solid blue side to the box, you can actually do a bit of hand calligraphy with a logo or something using the paintbrush. And that I think is the closest thing to the stuff I've learned to do being in OpenSim and Second Life all these years. I
have a bit of a similar question, because I mean the one thing is down to my heart, and it's also some of the essence of this upcoming EU-funded project, is that we would like to train language educators on creating games in virtual worlds. And we're not talking about game engine type of action games. We're talking about taking, for example, the image of a board game, adding it to a prim which lies on the floor, and creating a dice that when you click on it, that jumps up and actually produces a number. I mean, it's that simple as this. How would I go about in actually being able to do that or learn that? Would I need to learn Blender in order to do that?
Probably not, because you could probably find things like a dice object somewhere around the place. I'm sure there's an OBJ on the internet somewhere that you can grab that's got a nice license on it. You can slap a texture on a cube inside Unity. That can be done sort of at the levels of the built-in tools with Unity already. Really, the slightly hardest bit you've mentioned there is the sort of touching the dice to roll it away. But you could do it through our scripting language. We've added Lua very recently, so we've got a Lua implementation that you can use to script more complicated things with. And that sort of random rotation would be fairly simple to do.
Oh, I've got a question I'm dying to ask you, but a technical one for one. I have a skybox around the major build I'm trying to do, which is like an outer space one I found somewhere. And is it possible to get the skybox itself to rotate around the region?
It is possible. You need to get a different skybox shader, but there's a whole bunch of ones. There's one by Kajiro Takahashi, who's a Unity Japan engineer. He's got a GitHub account. I can send you the link to it later. He's got a skybox shader that's got a whole bunch of extra options, including rotation and a few more tinting and things options available.
I figured if I could get the skybox to rotate, then I might as well have my planet. I would feel like I'm on a moving planet. So yes, very good. Okay, tricks of the trade there. We love it. Nothing like having somebody on hand. But it just occurred to me. James, he must still be here, or we haven't got enough air. I wondered, A, if you got any questions, but B, I know you probably monitoring the channel. Is there anybody in the video channel been asking anything? Or
No, we just had one person asked who the panelists were, so they came in late and just wanted to be reminded of the names, so I did that. That's all.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're just enjoying the show.
Yep.
passive television watchers. I don't know.
Right. That's right. Well, I had one question for Adam, and I don't know how ill-informed the question is, but something that I'm seeing happening a lot now is, especially in the gaming systems, Xbox and PlayStation, is people broadcasting and streaming their gameplay, through some kind of a service. And do you see that happening with your platform? I mean, in the sense that you have it built in to what you're doing, and then you can stream it to an audience.
We've thought about doing actually a native Twitch implementation, because there's a couple for Unity that are really easy for us to drop in. The question has been for us more just how interesting is that for streaming viewers.
Yeah.
And if it's interesting, because I know we've got some games and things that are being built, and perhaps there's probably room for the streaming those to be quite interesting. But we've really wanted to see that there's a useful feature there before we actually go off and spend a week building it out.
Right. I was just curious. It's a strange phenomenon, but it's definitely a phenomenon.
I've done a couple of things, offline, scrappy, sort of quick video grabs offline from space. There's a very simple key. I think it's Alt something or Alt V, or is it Alt U? Just kills the interface. So like the way we film in here, it's very easy. But Rowan gave me a copy of his build of, I guess it's a conference center of some sort. In fact, I think it's actually live now in space anyway. And when you enter that region, right, rather like the region that Heike had earlier, the book fair, suddenly your interface has a kind of menus available in it that weren't available in the region you were previously in, because they're hard coded into the region. And in Heike's case, it was simply 4 buttons saying sit 1, sit 2, sit 3, sit 4 to choose a seat and sit on it. And if it was lit up, it was free, and if it was grayed out, it meant somebody was already sitting. But in the one Rowan showed me, for example, they have it's a presentation sort of build. When you go in, it immediately gives you 3 buttons, and one button zooms you into the display screen. The other one zooms you into the speaker on the podium, and the other one zooms you back into an audience shot. So it's a bit like our camera HUDs that we have here. And those, as I gather it, Adam will no doubt correct me, but those are actually coded in as interface elements before you even upload the region to the space server.
Yeah, so those were done by Rowan using actually, we've got a bunch of non-scripting tools that sort of let artists build functions off objects. I didn't even realize that you could do that stuff with it, but Rowan did set those all up. So Rowan's not a programmer, so he doesn't know how to script, but he whipped that whole thing together, the user interface and a lot of it using just visual tools that we've got built into the Unity editor. And it is actually really powerful what you can do with all that stuff. It's shockingly powerful how much you can do with it. But yes, those things are all there's a built-in user interface editing system in Unity called UGUI, and we've got full support for it. So you can actually sort of lay out user interfaces in a really intelligent manner that handle things like different screen sizes, all that sort of things, how it resizes across different monitors, and you can play with all those things by yourself and add those to your regions or your virtual goods or anything else that you've uploaded to let everyone see and use all those functionalities that you've built in.
Something else occurs to me, because it's the conversation that inspires the questions, really. Permissions. I'll give you a hypothetical here. I'm sure our viewers won't mind me talking slightly shop, as it were. But imagine I've got my studio built, and it looks a bit like this in space, and I have a region in front of, you just see us on camera, of course, but I have a region in front here with a few seats so there can be a live audience in world as well as watching on the broadcast. Now, ideally, this isn't a case of having one simulator up for the audience and one simulator up for the stage, like you would do in, say, OpenSim. Would it be possible for me to actually have like an access list of people coming into a region who were able to enter the region clean and go to the stage to participate, but build an interface for all other people coming in that locks them into the audience area and gives them seating options?
Yes, that could be done. You might need to venture into a little bit of scripting to do that with the certain objects appearing for certain users or not, but yes, it absolutely can be done.
Right, that I could see being very useful, because especially here, as you can see, we don't really have an audience here unless somebody's dragged a friend along. It's all down to the show, but because we avoid that. Brings me really
to saying and mentioning what I really, really enjoyed during the virtual book fair, that the guests had a guest login, so they didn't need to create an account. Yeah. They had to give in a nickname. They had to choose an avatar, but it was so straightforward. And that brings me to another question the other day that I posted to Ebbe Altberg in the Virtual World Best Practice in Education conference, that special keynote that he gave, where he invited a couple of people close to be able to ask questions, is because I thought I'd understood from his expressions about Sansar years ago that they were aiming for 2 levels of users for the space. And he explained something really, really fascinating. And the 2 levels of users I'm talking about is the passive viewer crowd, and the more active say in a web conference, for example, those who present but also moderate, perhaps in a panel discussion, and then there's this crowd of people that only appear on the screen as a name, and they can chat. And I thought, I mean, this is the big problem with Second Life. People have to create an account, have to create an avatar. As soon as they create an avatar, they are aware that they look like a newbie. So here comes the stress of getting some customized clothes, yeah? And so, and if they were able to join the space, or Second Life for that matter, as a name on the screen, first of all, to get to know the environment, to browse around, to even watch people dancing on the dance floor, and then eventually to decide to create their own avatar. But that could be easily done with an invisible avatar, you know, really easily. People could just appear as an invisible avatar. And I posted that question to Ebbe Altberg, and he said that they did experiments with, and it was for them a matter of, you know, how could they convert the onlookers to real residents in Second Life, yeah? And so they did experiments, and they massively sort of put out, they had drones of cameras whirling around the space, and they did some streaming, basically streaming services in order to enable that service. And they said the conversion rate was so low, it really surprised them. And so they skipped this whole idea of streaming it to the unknown user and dropped that. The streaming costs were too high.
It was me that asked that question. We've covered it a few times. It is actually a bit more basic than that, because on Live and a few of these services, all they do is they launch your Firestorm or Second Life viewer from the cloud, and you actually run your viewer over the cloud. So it appears to be a kind of method of video streaming. And as an experiment, Linden Lab did their own streaming service in the cloud, without telling everybody, and obviously not charging you.
I don't even think it needs a streaming service. I think people can enter space without being visible. You know, an invisible avatar.
The point that Ebbe was making, because he said, well, I will tell you this anyway, is that I was surprised and they were surprised by the result, because what they were doing was they were taking random newbies. In other words, people were logging into the website to get an avatar. And completely at random, they were shunting some of them to another site where they were given a choice of streaming the world or downloading the client. And those who chose to stream obviously got it via streaming via the web, and they were interoperating with it via the cloud. What surprised Ebbe, and it did surprise me too, is that given the simplicity of the new option, people were still choosing to download the full client. So they really, what surprised him was that he thought they would take the web link to the streaming version, but in fact they chose to download. And so having a web link is not the be all and end all. You know, even the noobs who knew nothing and were just registering straight off were actually opting for the download rather than for the lightweight streaming version. But in space, it's fairly easy because you can log in as a guest, and I guess you show up as one of those unknown users or something, but you've got your avatar, you've got everything else, and once you're used to it, next time you go in, instead of logging in as a guest, you register a name and make your own avatar. So you can test it out as a guest and then make an avatar.
Yeah, exactly. Those studies probably wouldn't terribly surprise me. I think that there's it's when you get into the whole realm of sort of optimizing user experiences and looking at conversion rates and whatever, there's actually something that's kind of called the lobster trap, where if you force a user into a step where they can only move forward, then you actually end up with a lot more of them sticking around in the end. Not always. Sometimes you do sort of turn someone off completely, but sometimes if you've already got them, they're sort of in for a penny, in for a pound. They may as well get the whole client and viewer installed. And I wouldn't be surprised if that did have an impact on the conversion rates. The problem with forcing the viewer downloads, though, is just that it really hurts a whole group of users who want to be able to sort of quickly share things. So maybe people who aren't explicitly around the sort of virtual world space, but for instance, educators, for example, who want to be able to send a link around to a group of other people, and they don't want them to mess around with installing a client and hopping in and finding things, which has been the big problem we've tried to solve with the WebGL client. And in that respect, I think it's valuable, even though it may have a lower conversion rate overall versus trying to force people into the heavier client. It may make it also a lot easier that the total numbers who can access the browser client, a lot more people can get in overall, and it's a lot more useful for the people who created the content initially to be able to easily link it around, comparable to sort of the big download client.
I thought in retrospect that although it surprised me what Ebbe had said, might make sense, not because even though these were noobs signing up for an avatar, somebody somewhere or something had prompted them to go to Second Life website to register. And the chances are that whatever had inspired them to go there was probably a person who might have recommended they download the client because that was what it was all about. Kind of thing.
And I think that sort of stops things from going viral too, because if you've got something that takes a good 5 to 10 minutes to actually get set up and going into, you've lost the sort of the Facebook audience. You can't really just hot link to a region and say, hey, have a look at this, because when you've got the browser clients, it really is like that. You can hot link something to somewhere and immediately sort of share it around, and once you like it, it's easy enough for you to copy and paste the URL and share it to your friends. There's sort of no effort required to do that kind of thing, which is a totally different experience for virtual worlds. I don't think anyone at all has come close to doing anything like that yet. All the virtual worlds so far, with the exception of perhaps Cloud Party, have all been those heavy clients that do require active involvement and investment on the user's part to actually get into them.
I was just wondering what would many virtual worlds do if Google now, with Google Earth having come out just recently with this big new splashy upgrade, if Google was to issue a Google avatar, what do you think would happen?
Google did a while ago. They had Lively, which was their own.
That was Lively, but wasn't Google on Google Earth?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that through the same thing that happened with
Lively
with was it Trinity that did
Trinity. It's what we call a mirror world. Except the Trinity, it's still got a lot of users, Trinity, but it's never really grown up beyond its big word balloons. I think what you're getting at, Heike, is I'm actually reminded of a thing that was on the web years ago called Weblins, where you had a little avatar, and they even had a place in Second Life where they would scan your avatar and make the Weblin avatar. And it was a tiny little avatar that was like a floating star sheet or something that was ran along the bottom of every web page you visited. But you could build up friends and you could teleport people to the web page you were on and things like that. It's just simply sending them an URL.
How cute.
But no, I can actually see what you're getting at, because if Google are seriously looking at that VR thing, it's more like the Street View thing, where you dive in from Google Earth to a location, you wander around and you see it. If they were able to put your presence in there in the form of a Google avatar and connect that to Google Talk so you could summon people back and forth to places on Google Earth, then I actually think it would probably make sense for them to do that. But you are talking about
and a little bit of the Pokemon, because the people's locations are geotagged anyway through their mobiles. So imagine we could appear in a holographic version as a mobile user.
But for sure, I think the thing here you have to realize is that an avatar presence, even if it's a 3D walking thing, you know, it's a bit more like what Yahoo used to call an avatar. Just it was basically your photo, your cartoon picture of yourself. I suppose in the day that was a kind of avatar, but you got to realize that whether we're talking about OpenSim, the Hypergrid, Second Life, or indeed space or anything on the web that is a virtual world or virtual space, these are things that they may bear on reality, but they're things out of the imagination, whatever. So the idea of a mirror world, which would be something that added a virtual element, this really falls with the augmented reality thing, where you would somehow have a presence on things like Google Earth and your geolocation and stuff like that. And I think it's an extension of that rather than an extension of virtual places, which can be linked to the real world, but are generally speaking independent. You know, there have been quite a few experiments with mirror worlds.
Well, if you think of language learning, and this is what we're on about, virtual language learning, is the appeal to travel to Florence in Italy and then actually have some Italian lessons there virtually.
Yeah.
As well as do a virtual language travel as per se, because so many people spend huge amount of money on language travel as such. They travel to England, for example. The kids already travel to England, you know, weeks at end, to be able to be immersed in an English-speaking environment. And this is what we learned about Second Life, that those sims that are by nature sort of, say, virtual Moscow or virtual Berlin or virtual New York and what have you, they're actually frequented by the native speakers of this particular country and the language. So if I wanted to learn Russian, I go to virtual Moscow and I would find Russian-speaking avatars standing in the squares and talking to each other and be able to listen in.
I'll tell you, you know, if you go on Hypergrid Safari here, the number of times we end up on Metropolis or Franco Grid, and we've got no choice but to learn a bit of German and French. You know,
yeah.
I mean, it's almost an accidental thing, but sometimes that works better than when it's deliberate. Because if you're, you know, it's like getting off a plane and you're wandering around in the centre of Paris and all the French are doing what they normally do, which is pretend they don't speak English. You know, you've got to fight your way into understanding what they're saying or getting a reply out of them. And, you know, if you really don't have a clue, you know, they usually give up and say, oh, damn it, speak English, you know. But you know, that is half the fun of these servers that are scattered all around the world in different cultures with different languages. You know, you are like getting on a plane and landing in a strange land with a strange language. And I think that's half the fun of it because,
we have a lot of great, research going on with kids learning English in Minecraft. And this is just so awesome. I wish space was such a world where we could get kids together, thinking about like school children from one country learning English and school children from another country learning English, and they meet in space and be able to do, well, what would they be able to do?
Well, I think that would be fairly easy, because I'm obviously referring to Adam here, because I presume if it's kids that are under adult age, they, you know, the region could be lots that they can only get in or something. They need to be on an access list. But they're getting a lot of interest with educators already. So
yeah, but what can they do? What can the kids do? Can they build? No.
It will be up to you to author and compile the environment that dictated what they could do, I think. But Adam.
Yeah, no, they could. We're adding multi-user building. Actually, that's one of our features that we're actively working on right now. Is expanding the build tools to multiple region owners, because right now we lock the building tools to the person who owns the region. We're adding the ability to sort of delegate off parcels, which is a little bit more complicated in our environment because it's not really the sort of the 2D planar regions that OpenSim and Second Life are. So we are adding those facilities, but I mean, yes, you could build all sorts of scripted interactive content or unscripted interactive content in the space tools all these kids could interact with. I mean, we could build things like quest lines and whatnot else in space that you want them to to participate in together, those can all be sort of set up and ready to go.
Adam,
I mean, like building together, like in Minecraft, for example. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to. Did you say that is Unity such? Can you tunnel into the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't even need to have a ground.
Ah, okay. I was just thinking, Mel, your space is downstairs. If you could tunnel in the ground.
Oh yeah. You basically create a plane, I guess, which is the ground level, and it can put terrain on it. But there's lots of empty space underneath. So I've yet to figure out how you can build Australian style. Sorry, Adam.
Oh, you just pretty much. That would be the answer.
Yeah, a hole in the ground, and just send it down under. Sorry, but and also coming back to what Heike was talking about. I mean, something we do try and discuss on the show from time to time. Is it's the future too, because virtual worlds are only a part of the equation of more immersive interaction, and whether we're all adopting mobiles and speeding up and driving ourselves frantic, or whether we're adopting virtual worlds and slowing down a bit and starting to think again. There's different sides of the coin, but I imagine there will be a time when, as Heike mentioned, you can go right to Google Earth, and you can zoom into Italy to explore Italy because you think you're going there for a holiday or something, or want to learn a bit more about it. And you wander around the streets of, I don't know, Rome or Venice or somewhere. And occasionally on Google Earth, you will come, or Street Views it will be by the time you've zoomed in, you'll come, you may or may not have an actual avatar, but you will come, you'll come to a sign. And if you look at that sign, there will be like one of those, what are they called, Q codes on the wall. And from Google Earth, you'll be able to scan a sign that will maybe be an invite to the link that launches the embedded virtual Italy somewhere. So you'll be able to transition between all this, the mirror world and the virtual web, and have triggers that can launch you into a virtual environment. It will be a separate thing, but the fact that space is on the web means that a virtual Italy in Spain, in space would actually be able to launch from a web link. And the web link could be a Q code thing that's on a wall in the real world or on Google Street View. So eventually, I think these things will sort of integrate. In what ways it ends up happening, I don't know. But at the moment, I separate the augmented world, which is the augmented real world, from the virtual world, because it's easy to bracket some of the technologies and say, they're sort of related, which they are. But in terms of content and concept, they're very different things. In an augmented world, I will be able to call you on Skype and wear a HoloLens type thing, and I'll be able to talk to your 3D hologram avatar standing in my room. But my room will still be my room, and that's where you'll have been invited. With virtual reality, we're talking about a completely shared space and collaboration and things like that. So the two are very kind of different in one respect.
I can imagine that if I had a Google avatar and I would go to New York 5th Avenue and then I see this Nike shop, if in future sometime that I would be actually to be able to, click on the door, which would then help me to enter a 3D space of the actual shop, where I could go and order the latest Nike boots and have it sent to Germany. Who knows? And,
a lot of retailers, big retailers online, supermarkets even actually have virtual supermarkets online where you walk around. It's on the web. They're not made imaginative. You just walk past loads and loads of shelves and you click on what you want. It goes to your cart. When you filled out your shopping cart, you buy it. And there's no reason that the trigger for those websites, which are 3D, can't be launched by a simple code you scan your phone at. It's all connectivity. A lot of these things will merge with time. We probably if we try and predict how, we'll probably get it all wrong, but it will happen. Convergence theory. And virtual worlds will be part of that, you know. I don't think anybody's ever going to want to run a virtual world client just to visit a shop in New York. They're going to want the virtual world shop to be on the web and loadable from a sign.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing I come back to whenever I hear sort of someone saying virtual worlds could be used for. The question I immediately ask is that more useful in a web browser? And I think in some cases, yes. I think in the cases of things like fashion and anything that's sort of got that sort of entertainment angle to it, yes, they definitely can be. But I also think in a lot of cases, like for instance, the supermarket case, it's not more useful than just being able to load up a list of items on your phone in a browser. And I think that's something that always has to be moderated against. Can we use virtual worlds for this, or will we use virtual worlds for this? Because I think that unless it's more useful or more entertaining than, for instance, just doing it in your browser, then people won't do it. I think that's always something to just keep in the back of your head and make sure that before you go off and build one of these things, because if it's not, then people aren't going to use it. You just simply will have this question of, well, why would I want to do that instead of this, which I'm already doing?
I think it's down to use cases. One of the funny anecdotes I always talk about, is, I've got some real world friends who won't be seen dead or alive coming into these worlds, And I've got one friend in particular. She logged in. I told her how to download the client, have a look around, sniff around, and everything else like that. And she was sort of, for a moment, quite happy playing in her little cartoon land until we encountered a few people. And I don't know what she thought was happening, but she didn't realize that they were real people. And she freaked out, as the expression goes, immediately. It was like a crowd thing. She couldn't handle it. She was out there. But on the other hand, for people like me who understand these spaces, that is the very attraction of it. Every avatar I see is another real person. So go figure, what is the use case?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask a question there to Adam?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, the non-playing characters you have in space, how would you recognize that they're not real?
Well, they don't have a name tag floating above their head. That's probably the first sign. And the second thing is when you can't click on them to bring up a profile window, which you can with every other normal avatar.
Right.
So it's fairly easy to recognize them, right? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, the lack of a name tag is really the dead giveaway.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there should be a name tag with a question mark over it.
And the reason I'm asking about non-playing characters, because for language learning, they could be very, very instrumental when you add it's like a chatbot, that welcomes you to a certain space and you can talk to. Say you have a non-playing character in a shop, and you go there and you practice your exercises of how to buy things, and it could be a non-playing character, couldn't it? No?
Yes, absolutely. There's no sort of real limits there. We've tried to make the NPCs useful, because I know that's always been a falling point on a lot of other virtual worlds in the past, has been that you couldn't create easy NPCs that look the same as a normal avatar. So we've actually got the whole system built for that. You absolutely could. You could script them to interact with players. There's some scripting API hooks available for them already. We've also got the quest tools that we've done. Those things are sort of built for building sort of MMO style quests, but they're also really good for educators building exactly that sort of environment. And you could set up sort of the conversations with them that way as well, as you've got a few options, because they've got a native hooks all the way through the quest tools, because obviously they're sort of an integral component to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. If before Adam arrived, his seat was taken, of course, earlier on by Lyr Lobo. But if maybe James can camera around briefly, but on the other stage at the side, there's another Lyr Lobo sitting on the stage, and she's our resident NPC. We just simply call her Lyr Old, I think. But there's oddly enough, I can friend her. It won't do me any good, but I can't actually have a dialogue with her. Whereas with game style NPCs, they could literally be scripted, I guess, to respond to. They're like AIs. If the scripts are good enough, they become AIs, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you could back-end script them to an AI, I guess. I think that it would be possible to set up something that did sort of like an interface to the Facebook Messenger bots and all sorts of things like that.
Yeah.
Could be done. You'd have to do a bit of work to do that bridging work, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think it's actually very easy too, if people go to a web link, to actually, rather than log in as a guest, to try it out. But I think instinctively most people give themselves a name and get an avatar. You were making me think just then when we were talking about Facebook and things. Yeah, how can you go on Facebook and have a conversation with somebody on Facebook? They won't let you unless you're already registered. Everywhere wants to know who you are. And it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, if you want to have conversations in space and log in as a guest, and whoever's talking to you is just going to be nobody saying this to you. And you're replying, yes, well, thank you, nobody. Did you say you were? I had that earlier. I was talking to Lyr in space, and somebody else was on the same channel, and it was a nobody, and the nobody says, nobody's speaking with Pookie's voice. And I thought, is that Pookie Amsterdam? Nobody. I was having difficulty figuring it out, so I must admit, I think I prefer name tags to be available, or at least some clue as to who it is you're interacting with.
Yeah, you should have to pick a nickname on the guest accounts. We do require that, but it's not a huge barrier. We don't need to actually fully register for it.
Okay.
Can I ask about a feature that has to do with the text chat in space? Do you remember in Second Life at the very beginning, Google Translate was built into the text chat, and then they made it purchasable, and it kind of became out of practice. A couple of translation tools, yes, so that you could, have a translation in the text chat. Is that possible?
It's a pricing issue for the most part for us, and the reason for that is that when you do the numbers on how much they charge per character and whatever, like a small social group, let's say it's a small social group of like 10 to 20 people. Say you've got one of those and you've got translation going on because there's one user who's in there who's in a different language, but you've got to do it once. This could get a lot more pricey when you've got 3 languages involved, for example. Just converting the amount of traffic that social group would generate over a month would cost us about $20. So you can imagine that's just 10 to 20 users. That's how much it would cost to sort of maintain a persistent translation for them. As it grows and expands, it really does sort of add up to a huge amount, and actually it would outgrow our server hosting costs and all the other ones by a very considerable margin. And that's why we don't have it baked in. I mean, it's an easy enough feature to add, but right now the pricing models that are available just really don't add up. They're quite expensive.
Is that specifically for things like Google Translate, where you're
there's about 3 or 4 big APIs, and they're all priced roughly around the same level. Really, there needs to be sort of a 10 or 100 time reduction in cost for it to begin to make sense.
Right. I know there's translators in OpenSim here. I've got one. I'm not wearing it now.
There's a free tier available. So the first 2 million characters is free, and then after that point it's more expensive. And the problem is we don't qualify because obviously we go past that first 2 million characters in a moment's notice.
No, the thing about the ones in here too is I often wonder if it's not like some kind of static database or something that's doing it, because they don't, they're not particularly accurate sometimes, and you see consistency in the inaccuracies. So it's not like it doesn't seem like a translator is actually learning anything. It's almost like just referencing and looking up what it thinks is right. But again, the quality shows, if it is something static, as it were, like, I don't know. It's certainly, I was thinking probably the best thing to do is, when you were talking, I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if somebody, a creator, created, like they have in High Fidelity, like a single whiteboard or blackboard that you can actually upload into the world and actively type on, and have the other users see what it is. And it would just make sense to me that somebody did that as a virtual product, and maybe somebody
virtual flip
maybe somebody can put on the marketplace a translator.
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually really doable.
Yeah,
there's not much work required for that.
And if somebody did a translator on the marketplace, even if it was using Google Talk, it would be the liability of the person hosting the back end who sold it to you, not Sine Wave itself. Or space, I should say. So I imagine if a translator's really wanted, somebody will make one. And how much they charge you for it in World will probably reflect the cost of the service.
Yep, absolutely.
Mm.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, the world is our oyster. It's all open. But believe it or not, this show has gone on a very long while, especially if we add the hour before Adam. So this is going to be one of our longest shows, but it's been really fascinating. We haven't mentioned the word hypergroup once, I don't think, which is most unusual. Yeah. I'd like to close with both of you actually. I'll go with you, Heike, first. Up and coming stuff, while we got you here. Let's say about what you're going to be doing, what's coming up, anything highlights of things you'd like to let our viewers know about.
Well, for the major part, my web conferences are finished now, but we do have languages coming up. That is SL languages. That is 8th or 9th of July, the weekend. That is a web conference for language educators in Second Life, and we tend to venture into different virtual worlds, and I hope that space is a big part of languages this coming. And but it's a smallish web conference for just Inworlders and just language educators. So don't expect huge crowds, but it does compile on an annual basis. It's the 9th time this year, so we've been running it for 9 years, and it always is the hub of learning, how to teach Inworld.
Where is any components of that in OpenSim? Because I know some of the languages people are out here on the Hypergrid too.
Well, I keep saying that we live in Second Life and we work in OpenSim, and it's a bit like Virtual World Best Practice in Education is in Second Life still, and everybody who works out there comes together for that one occasion. It's Adam hasn't been around for a while, but he comes back, Yeah.
I know why you say I know why you say you live in Second Life. It's the shopping, isn't it? It's all those it's all those expensive clothes. You don't want to know how much.
No. Yeah, that's true. My wardrobe is quite expensive, but I'm an owner, a sim owner, and we run a community of language educators, and we run 4 sims at the moment. My place is called EduNation. We have some 30 residents, and they include universities, they include research organizations or teacher training organizations or independent language educators or language schools. It's a whole host, but it's just simply caters for language education.
Okay. So, closing thoughts from you, Adam, in terms of anything exciting coming with stuff, without being too technical. I know the viewer will be moving up to be compatibility with the latest Unity. But yes, anything else you haven't mentioned exciting on the horizon? Any major big things?
No. We've talked about, we've got mobile coming. That's one of our next big things. We'll release our VR clients as well fairly soon. They're just a preview release. They're not the sort of the formal releases, but I think they'll be good enough to sort of use at a basic level. But we got some other big things that I haven't talked about, and not even with other creators yet. Only a few of them know about this stuff. We've got new avatars coming, new basic avatars. They're the same ones we've got already, but we've added about 100 and something different sliders to them, so you can get all sorts of body shapes, styles, all those sorts of things are coming down the pipeline soon. We have a really cool feature coming down the line where you can use any old webcam. So if you've got a laptop with a cheap webcam on it,
I downloaded you just reminded me. I downloaded the beta viewer from your website. Simply because my Unity had updated, and I thought I'll see the difference. The first thing I saw, as well as Edit Room, was a buttons. I think it was for face cam or something.
Yes.
And I pressed it, nothing happened, of course, but I thought it was in my face. I thought, will it connect to my webcam or not? It didn't.
Yes,
but,
so that one,
yeah.
it's facial tracking. So you, like, for instance, if you move your eyes or your mouth or whatever, it'll actually translate directly onto your avatar, and everyone else will be able to see it.
So if we do an interview out there or a show like this, I won't have to put lip sync. I won't put lip sync on. We'll just talk into our cameras.
Yes, absolutely. And it actually works really well. I've got some great little screenshots from our earlier testing that we've been doing. So that's coming down the horizon fairly soon as well. We'll probably make a bit of noise about that one because it is a really nifty little feature that we've added. We've got a few other bits and pieces coming along the line. We've got multi-user editing of our Inworld build tools. So you can designate areas within a region to be allowed other people to build in. Nice. All sorts of different bits and pieces coming down the pipeline, UI improvements, bits and pieces. Like I've got our feature list, and sort of through to the end of the year, we've got another 95 or so features planned. Some of them small, some of them big, but we're all looking forward to seeing those coming down the pipe.
A quick question, although I don't know whether the Inworld tools really include the facility. When you said you'll be able to have a designated region where other people can, I guess, spawn things or build things.
Yep.
Will that be collaborative? In other words, will they be able to build? They can build a box, then hand it to you to build the a globe on top.
Exactly. Yeah. So at that point, it's very similar to the tools you've got in other virtual worlds. I guess the only real change is that you're working with mesh instead of primitives. Yeah. Besides that, similar process.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's great. Oh, that's it. You know, you've got the wants list all sorted in stages. Yeah, I must say I could not resist that button that switched on my webcam that didn't. I mean, that was Rowan screen shared with me actually on one point, and I could see it was working for him, and I could see his. I guess no, it wasn't in Skype. I could see his webcam with all the yellow lines and the white lines and dots on the key points of his face, and I was watching his real life face talking, and I was seeing all these white lines and dots moving, and then I was seeing his avatar mimicking what his webcam was seeing from the focal points. It was fun. Looked good.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm looking forward to playing with it as we sort of get that one ready for release. It should be soon. It's a feature that's a little bit behind our release schedule because we ran into some refinement we needed to do.
Yeah.
And I can tell you how pleased we were with Space's animations, the clapping the hands together, hugging each other, and actually almost like touching the avatar. And it's funny because one of our language educators came in. We've been in World in Second Life for about 10 years, and we used to stand in front of each other for, I don't know, hours, weeks, months, I don't know how often. And we forever kept on wanting to hug each other. Yeah, and then in Space, the first thing we did was give each other a clap and a hug, and it was just so wonderful.
It's funny, the motion tracking in high fidelity. Apparently, this is something weird. I found out the other day. You'll laugh at this, Adam. They've got the motion tracking thing so that to friend somebody, you actually have to go up and hug them or shake hands, right? And you do it with your motion-driven thing, right? The only problem is I couldn't find any way to have somebody as a friend without having a 3D headset on and going up to them and hugging them.
Yeah.
Apart from the fact I couldn't see anyway, but I mean, for those folks who don't, for those folks that don't know, Sinewave, who are the company behind Space, have a long history in Second Life, and some of the best animations you might ever have found in the past originated with Sinewave's Second Life operation, didn't they?
Thank you. Yeah, we did.
So I think you had a library of animations already, even if they did need converting. And presumably most of them are mocap as well.
Yes, they're all mocap. We had a studio in London. We still do, actually. We've got our motion capture rig.
Yeah, and that makes all the difference because it's real.
And what I like about Space also is the fact that you're saying you're controlling the upload of people and you do not allow certain content. So will we see some explicit content on your site, such as in Second Life, or not? For educators, this is an important question.
Not explicitly disallowed, actually. We do. There is a whole process involved. We're currently working with a couple of fairly well-known people in that sort of space to make sure that we get it right. One of the things we absolutely want to make sure is that when you're on sort of the public locations, there is no explicit content because it's all tagged and basically forbidden from those zones. So any animations, clothing, that kind of thing, you just simply cannot use in a space that doesn't allow it. And that's the model we're pursuing down, so that it's there, but it's not visible unintentionally, which is obviously a big concern with things like creators and whatnot. So not creators, educators and whatnot, making sure that content never breaches the wall.
But presumably, if you get a commercial client who wants a red light district, it could be built, but there'll be rules making sure that it can't be accessed.
Yeah, the big thing is that when we do our content review, we can tag what the maturity level of the content is, and if it's mature content, then it just gets simply blocked out of the system. Similar to how IMVU do it. IMVU do make you pay, I think, $20 for an adult pass, and at that point, that content is available to you, but you can't just spring it on other users who don't have that money, who don't have that pass.
Sure. So, no more flying penises invading your educational conferences.
Yeah.
Unless they come from Russia, because they will find a way. Oh dear, oh dear. Well, this is very... Sorry, I didn't mean to start the giggles. Right, well, this has been fascinating. I've almost got 1,000 more questions to ask you, Adam. If when I do get this dance studio set up in there, I want to start my one-to-one interview show, Crossworlds, again. So if I don't get you back here, I'll definitely try and get you on that in space itself. There are 1,000 questions that will probably come up they will come up. If I'm doing an interview, I'll write them down and supposed to hear where it's all open-ended. But it's been fascinating. Thanks for coming over. Sort of muddying your feet in the old hypergrid again.
It's always good to have a look. Where I started, pretty much. So
I thank you guys very, very much, because it's a little dream has come true for me, because I've been wanting to get people Inworld in just invite them in the conferences, or just invite them on a casual basis for years. And my second EU-funded project was all about access to a virtual world, and I imagined this access to be so easy, and suddenly it has become true. And I thank you very much for all the hard work of developing it. And I know you've been working on it for 7-8 years or something. Yeah. Rowan has been absolutely fantastic with trying to do this in such a short time because of the conference coming up, and he was so helpful. I mean, just the people behind Sine Wave company is just wonderful. Thank you so much for all your hard work and dedicated work.
Thank you.
Yes, I would agree with that. I must say that, the number of long sessions I seem to have had with Rowan online, and every 5 minutes I just got to take a client call and this. I thought, making the time just to run me through all that stuff. It was a great, very personal connection there. So, yeah, thank you very much. And lest we forget him, any closing thoughts from you, James, or any last-minute things from the audience?
No, nothing from chat. And I am so excited to go look more at Sine Wave, this Sine Wave space. It's very cool. Very cool stuff.
Well, I want you in there building a script in my studio with me.
Yeah, that's right.
Even a great name, let's go in space as opposed to in world. Let's go in space.
Let's do it in space.
Let's go to space. It's a to space.
Yep.
That's why I put a bloody orbiting planet skybolts idea. I thought, well, if I'm in space, I might as well be in space. Distinguish it from the other places. Anyway, yes, very good. Okay, well, I'm going to close there, folks. Thank you all for watching, or well, even in replay, even if you haven't seen this live. I know most of you watching replay. Hopefully, we will be back here with another edition for you next week. I have no idea who's going to be on it, and as you probably noticed, we sometimes do miss a week now if there's nothing major to talk about. But hopefully, we'll have a little bit of conversation about the hypergrid again next week, because I do appreciate that some of you have just spent 3 hours watching a program that didn't really talk much about it at all, did we? But it's all part of the same, the same grand scheme, the universal virtual conspiracy, or whatever we're going to call it. So I'd like to thank Lyr Lobo for being with us earlier. I didn't actually get a chance to thank her before she popped off. And I'd also like to thank Pathfinder Lester, who also popped off and left an empty seat, although we did know it was happening. They weren't being rude. And more to the point, I'd like to thank Heike. I've done it again. I've taken my glasses off and I can't pronounce that. I can't see the name to pronounce it. Yeah, there we are. Heike Philp. Thank you, Heike.
You're welcome.
And a special thanks to Adam Frisby, who's still showing up as unknown user to me, but go figure. That's that's open sim for you. Yep. Thank you very much, Adam.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Okay. Glad to have had you. And thanks, of course, to James Out Loud, also operating all our cameras for us today as well. So multitasking is something that men should not be able to do, or usually aren't able to do, but he can. Thank you. Right. Thank you, James.
You're absolutely welcome. I enjoyed so much, Mel.
Okay, so all I can do now basically is wish you all a very good morning, or a very good afternoon, a very good evening, or indeed a good tomorrow. And that's actually particularly apt today in Adam's case, because it is about 5 a.m. for him, I believe.
It's 8 a.m. now.
Right, but you, just to prove the point, you are in tomorrow. So my sign-off line is not inappropriate. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And we'll see you soon. Bye for now.